Hey everyone, welcome back to the IWP Network, or if it's your first time, welcome hanging out with us. Thank you so much for choosing this podcast, and feedback is always welcome. So make sure to check the links below for all social media links, audio and video versions of this show, and merch. We look forward to hearing from you and hearing that feedback, and enjoy the show. Ladies and gentlemen, take two. Hopefully this works. Give us a test, Brian.
Test.
Oh, he sounds beautiful.
Test music.
I like that. I like that a lot.
That was horrible.
So even though we're 94 episodes in, we still have technical difficulties. Just checking real quick. It was a little bit delay.
But
Make
Brian
sure you guys can hear us okay.
Brian's the main one, so Brian's not echoey, he's not full of flange, and we will be talking Jim Crockett promotions tonight.
Thank you so much.
Everything you want to know about the NWA, but we're afraid to ask.
And then some.
Yeah, it was what we'll be covering tonight. Not current NWA. We'll get that in the Patreon episode. But for this one, just the Jim Crockett promotions. Mid-Atlantic, WCW, many names.
I bet many people, I would be surprised if anybody listening to this podcast knows who Irish Haran is, but you will learn a lot about him today.
He sounds like a very Irish man.
He is. He's
Irish Haran.
He's the most Irish man of all time.
Yeah, his first name is actually Irish, and last name is very Irish.
Well,
so,
his first name, that was his nickname. It was like James, I think.
Oh, okay.
I know it was John, because it's almost like Johnny Moran.
Oh, okay. Johnny Haran. Irish Johnny Haran.
That should be a new gimmick for him.
Yeah, Irish Johnny Moran.
Irish Johnny Moran. First off, let's thank our amazing people over at Patreon. We do have a Patreon account. $5 gets you extra content. $1 gets you a shout out. If you want a shout out for your podcast or your business or your wrestling page,
or whatever,
or you just want to show support to us because you're a great person, you can do that. But we want to thank real quick the Tree of Life Metaphysical Shop for their donation. Brad Zalonis, the PA Piledriver Podcast, Hireth in Other Words Podcast, Jay, Austin Blackwell, and Jennifer Myers. We also have the live chat going. So if you guys are hanging out with us, you want to talk to us, ask some questions, join in the conversation, you can do so with the live chat. And then last bit of news here. I bet I got rid of it. No, I didn't. Oh, I think I did.
Pretty soon you're gonna have it memorized about Abaddon Studios.
Abaddon Tattoo Studios.
Because I was having memorized.
Abaddon Tattoo Studios is a unique experience.
A wonderful sponsor. We want freestyle.
Let's freestyle it.
Okay, Abaddon Studios is a tattoo studio in Pine Grove, Pennsylvania.
Yep.
It is one of our sponsors, and they have, I don't know how many artists, but 3 or 4. I think.
About 4, yeah.
And if you go on their Facebook page, you can see all the good work they do.
Their Instagram has hyperlinks to every single one of their artists in their bios.
Wow, that's cool.
So you can click on the artist and it'll take you to their personal page, and you can check out their whole.
And if you're going to get a tattoo, always look into the artist and the place you're going.
Very clean.
Yeah, I was gonna say
sterile.
this place is clean, sterile. You don't have to worry about anything like that. It's not dirty. It doesn't look dark and
no, it's
dingy.
Beautiful.
Yes,
it smells like a hospital.
Oh, that's. I've never been there, but I've seen pictures.
Yeah,
so again,
we have to go for like group tattoos.
Yeah, I want to get something. I want to.
I'm going to get Randy Savage's glasses tattooed over my eyes.
There you go.
That'd be a great tattoo.
Yeah.
That's going to be my new thing now. Every episode, I'm going to come up with a fun new wrestling tattoo that I'm totally going to get.
Like that guy that got the belt tattooed on his
on his abdomen. Yeah. So
my favorite one like that is the one with the Philly Fanatic and the nose is his belly button.
Oh, okay,
You
yeah.
see that guy?
Yeah.
That guy's a legend.
Yeah, Abaddon Tattoo Studio. Or is that full name?
Yep.
Abaddon Tattoo Studio, Pine Grove, Pennsylvania. Right on the main street there. You can't miss it. Right by down from the one stoplight. So,
yeah. We will be recording our Patreon content immediately following this episode, and it'll be uploaded tonight. So you can check it out tonight if you're a night bird, or you can check it out in the morning. If you wake up early, you can check it out. We'll be talking we'll be talking Fastlane. We'll do a little Fastlane preview. We're going to talk some news that happened recently in wrestling because we're like a bi-monthly show, so not like once a month show, sometimes 2 times a month.
NWA coming back with their pay-per-view.
So we got some news, and then our little gimmick for the Patreon is going to be we're going to book our worst WWE card pay-per-view card.
The worst show you possibly can.
Yes.
Mine's going to be called Slow Lane.
Slow Lane.
Breakdown lane.
Mine is Ass Lane.
Ass Lane.
Ass Lane.
Mine's gonna
Because
be
it sucks.
mine's gonna be night. It's gonna be called NyQuil.
NyQuil.
Yeah.
Oh, try
Monday
and stay
NyQuil.
awake.
Where
Yeah.
the big boys play with each
There
other.
was like a time in like 2011, and I was watching Survivor Series. And I was just like, oh, I was like an hour in. I was like, this feels like it's taking forever. Some like big multi-man with like Mark Henry and
Oh,
Miz.
wait till you see my
I just-
multi-man.
I did not give a shit at all. I said, I'm just gonna go to sleep.
So just a preference. When we do, we're not. I don't want to be like every other podcast where we shit on wrestling or we shit on stuff. Like sometimes we're like, oh man, that was rough. But like we do have respect for the people in the business. We have respect for the people who do it. Not every show's a hit. Everyone has a bad day. Everyone has a bad match. Our podcast is probably not up your alley, and you probably think these guys are shit. But that's fine. That's your opinion. But we really want to preface that we're booking the match based on how how WWE has created these characters and their talent and their abilities. Some guys leave the company and they're fantastic and they're great talents and they're amazing, but we're booking them as if what they are right now in WWE.
Yes,
And
some people ain't so.
and,
And we'll do an AEW one eventually.
Yeah,
too.
we'll do
it's
an
not just
AEW,
talking shit on WWE.
I want to do one where it's like the ultimate like fantasy booking.
Oh, we just pick people for that or alive.
Any
and dead.
era,
Oh,
any
my.
company,
The worst
but
card
the worst,
ever.
with the worst card ever. Ultimate, like the dream match edition, but like the matches, like we'll call it the nightmare matches.
Yeah.
No shot at Cody there.
I actually have a suggestion for that. If we're doing another show around WrestleMania, just you can pick like an 8-match card, or let's say a 12-match card because it's WrestleMania. But you can only pick one match from one WrestleMania. Like you can't do like 2 matches from one WrestleMania. You can't use the same wrestler twice. You can't use the same gimmick match twice, and you can't have the same title on the line twice.
Okay.
How many? Just to give a preview for our Patreon people, what gimmicks? Give us one gimmick you did.
I have a lumberjack match.
Oh, that's a good one. Yeah,
Ooh.
that's a good way to get people in. I didn't go too gimmicky. I'd have 8 matches.
Okay.
And
I went 6 with a pre-show.
Oh, okay. See, I didn't even think about the pre-show because a pre-show for my card would be very awful.
I tried.
Because the pre-shows are pretty awful.
I tried.
Oh, jeez.
I have a ladder match.
Okay.
I have a TLC
Oh boy.
4-on-4 tornado tag,
Oh my god.
and I have an Iron Man match.
I have a.
That goes into double overtime.
Let me see how I worded it.
I do also have an Iron Man match, and I have brought back Raw Underground.
Oh, that's a good one. I didn't think about that.
Yes.
I do not have an Iron Man match. I did not go the easy way there.
There may be a Raw Underground superstar who will be in my pre-show.
It might be one of my shows too.
Was it the guy that Bobby Lashley murdered?
Yeah.
That was my favorite guy on Raw Underground.
No, he may be the tallest man that's been on Underground.
My show will
You
start.
might be in my
with
main event if we're thinking about the same guy.
my show will start with a match that's called "Literally Who Cares" Tag Team Title Match.
Oh, you give him titles too.
Yeah, well, some have titles.
Okay. It's gonna be exciting. So if you want to check out that episode, it'll be on our Patreon later on tonight or this morning. In the morning. Very busy day for some people here tomorrow. You're gonna be live wrestling on Facebook.
Yes, on IWTV's Facebook for Can't Believe Prague.
Viewers' choice.
Yeah, viewers' choice. Tadpole something open.
The
Open swim.
tadpole open swim.
Open
Oh,
swim
Open
is
swim.
the
There we go. There we go.
yeah, tadpole match.
Yeah, so I will be on there live, and that
Camper's
starts at,
choice.
I'm not sure what time that starts though.
The show I believe starts at 6 o'clock.
Oh, okay. So does that start at 6 or is it before? Because I know that the pre-show, if you want to call it that, is before the main show.
Yes.
It is on IWTV.
The whole show is on IW. So it's not like the pre-show and then you have to
Yeah.
go to IWP Network and
Mhm.
subscribe and watch it. The
You
whole
watch
thing's
the whole
on
show
Facebook.
thing for free,
Yep.
and they are doing a thing where you can book the show.
Yeah, so this is going to go by live tweeting. So you
Mhm.
get to vote the stipulations for the match as it's happening.
I
So
believe
they're
it's-
literally doing a live wrestling show, and then you, as the audience, participate by using the hashtags on Twitter.
Yeah. And
And then the show itself will be facebook.com/independent wrestling.
okay,
Yes.
and if you do, I believe it's at Camp Leapfrog on Twitter. I'm going to check right now.
Yes, I can't believe right. Yep, that's exactly what it is.
So it's a very easy to remember.
It is sponsored by the Wicked Turtle Network, the Camper's Choice, High Tension Wrestling, and IWTV. It will be they'll have a 6-way scramble, a tag team, a singles match, a trios, and a 4 corners of survival.
Mm-hmm.
There's some names in there.
It's booked the Camp Leapfrog Campers your way.
Yeah,
So-
basically everybody has the opportunity to put their card with those people
Oh, Jesus.
on
That's right.
the. They can basically they've been given these different matches, a 6-week scramble, everything you just mentioned, and a pool of wrestlers, so they can make whatever they want out of those. Like 2 of the people in there, Jay Lyon and Midas Black. If you want to have main event explode and have Jay Lyon versus Midas Black. You can put that on your card, and whichever one gets the most likes and retweets on Twitter.
Don't vote
that's
for
the
that,
card.
please. I like those guys a lot.
I would love to see those two wrestle.
Yeah,
They came up together.
Yeah,
they came up
beat
in
the
the
hell out
same
of each other.
school. I'm sure they. Oh yeah, they would. Is that? I mean, that's true, right? I think, like the better friend you are with the person you're wrestling, the more you beat the hell out of them.
That's
Yeah.
very true. Yeah.
Well, so we'll see.
But it's
I
gonna
don't
be
know
a
if
great
that's going
card.
to happen, but I
gonna be
think
great.
they would tear the house down. I think they
I
would.
agree.
I think they would tear the house out. They had that opportunity.
Oh, anytime there's a House of Glory talent on a card, I'm in. And now that like there's a lot of House of Glory guys going to Camp Leapfrog, as well as the Chikara guys, it's like some of these are dream matches, like independent dream matches.
Mm-hmm.
Although, really quick too, there are 2 confirmed matches where the interactive element is you get to vote on the stipulations, and
Yes.
that is
The main event has been booked.
the Atomicos match, which is not the main event. It's Erica Lee, who was the winner of the Cybernetico they did at Fight Forever, the Boar, who was her regular tag team partner, Sunny Defarge, and making her Camp Leapfrog debut, Willow Nightingale. Very fun wrestler. She was on Alley Cat's Hot Girl shit that was on after the Camp Leapfrog thing at Fight Forever. I think she wrestled Alley Cat. Very fun wrestler.
I seen her on Blackcraft Wrestling when that was a thing.
Yeah.
Well, here's an interesting thing, because we were live tweeting and we kind of seen it happen live.
Mhm.
It's here's the big thing. If you're watching this live or any Leapfrog event, the live Twitter section is really, really fun.
This
Like, it's a
one,
great
I wouldn't
time.
expect as much interactivity because it's a live show, where that one was a tape show. So the
Yeah.
wrestlers were sitting at home for the most part, I'm imagining. Where here they're going to be at the show.
Usually you could interact with the wrestlers, maybe not so much this one.
I think you may get some guys who are sitting ringside watching the matches.
But I
may
mean,
tweet.
you probably won't be able to get a hold of the person wrestling the match.
Yes.
No, that
Hold on.
maybe.
I will say this. I will not throw
Does
a
the
past
Switch
Camp
have
Leapfrog for
Twitter
someone to-
functionality? Does the Switch have Twitter functionality? Because Leroy Green might be able to do both.
Yeah. It would be very interesting if someone stopped the match mid-match and said, "Let me tweet them for hating them for picking the stipulation."
At something says,
Yeah,
this match should be this way. Okay.
or a live photo coming as you're coming down to the ring.
Oh my.
Yeah, I would not put it past Camp Leapfrog to do something like
Yeah.
that.
But if you do want to join, at Camp Leapfrog on Twitter.
Yes.
Very easy to do that.
But as I was saying, last show, Love Frog, we actually had Alley Cat live tweet at Camp
Cool.
Leapfrog and said, like, when do I get my shot? So like Alley Cat's kind of making a little bit of a push on social media to try to get into the Leapfrog studio. You're making your debut, which is exciting, against a new opponent.
Yes.
King Lee. You were supposed to go against King Leon.
Yeah,
I don't know if they announced your opponent yet.
No, I don't think they did. So maybe we shouldn't.
I won't say who it is.
Yeah, but he's not going to be there anymore. So
Yeah.
me versus somebody.
He had some family
I'm
situations.
excited because it's going to be all on Facebook. So that means you can watch it for free.
Yeah.
You
And
can watch
then
the whole show for free.
this match, again, Erica Lee, Boar, Willow Nightingale, and Sunny Defarge against Killian and the Goons.
Oh, I love the Goons.
Killian McMurphy, the one and only, Eel O'Neill, Miles Millennium, and in the ring, in the match, Big Dust.
I want a
wrestling.
Big Dust shirt. I need a Big
And
Dust shirt.
I know like if you look on Twitter, he is not too happy because he's a manager. He's a manager. And
he doesn't
does
have a
not wanna
wrestling license.
He
What if
doesn't
he
want to
gets
get
hit
beat
in the
up.
toe and ruins that great voice.
I know. Oh my god.
And this is a high stakes match, and you on Twitter get to vote on the stakes. You get to vote what the losing team has to do. They either have to eat dog food, clean the Leapfrog Lagoon, or salute their shorts.
And then if it was watch a season, salute your shorts, not that bad.
Yeah.
No,
Not
it's
that
good
Let's
stuff.
hope they don't get kicked off of Facebook for nudity, for saluting their shorts. Yeah. But
I don't think they're going to take them off on camera. I have a feeling that'll happen behind the scenes.
and then the main event, if you want to
main-
talk a little bit.
Very unique thing here. The main event is a apuestas match, is what you would call it in Lucha. It's a mask versus mask match in a way. Somebody will be unmasked. It's Maximilian Zero against the artist Blank. And again, you get to vote here, either a no DQ match, and then what I think is leading is 2 out of 3 falls, or falls count anywhere. The winner of this match gets to unmask because both are kind of frustrated with their current identities. So the winner will unmask, not the loser.
Zero cut a great promo. He said, I showed up at wrestling school and it was my dream and I always wanted to do this. And I go to school and I finish my training and they hand me a mask and said, this is you, this is your moveset, this is your character. Everything about this is who you are, and that's what you have to embrace. And he goes, and I've been doing it for so long and I no longer want to do it. I want to be my own person. I want to do my own thing. And people just think mask versus mask, and there's that honor where you don't want to lose your mask. But these are two guys who not saying their mask has held them back. So I'm sure they're pretty grateful of their wrestling school and where they came from and the business they were in. But now it's like a rebirth for both of them, and they want to break out of that.
Yeah,
especially
and just
Zero.
Well, and Blank too, because just to explain the backstory on Blank, Blank wasn't always Blank. In Chikara, Blank was Race Jackson, and Race Jackson had a feud where he lost a match against a masked wrestler. And the stipulation was if he would have won the match, his opponent would have had to unmask. But because Race Jackson lost the match, he had to put a mask on. And so he has been forced to wear a mask, and this is his opportunity to take it off. So, yeah, high stakes here. But except if somebody, they always say it's your identity, but sometimes you don't want that identity. So one of these two is going to be able to shed that identity and go out on their own here.
Have a fresh start. Quite like when Jigsaw unmasked with the Vulture Squad in ROH. That wasn't good, no.
Or when Shane Storm unmasked. Or when Shane Storm unmasked and there was another mask.
Yeah, that could happen.
Or Sting took the mask off to his face paint.
Sting never had a mask.
Well, it was a thing in Impact.
Okay. Yeah.
No, he did it in WCW.
No, he means the plastic face mask that the fans would wear.
Yeah, he had the plastic mask, and he took the plastic mask off to reveal his painted. Yeah, so silly.
I would pop so hard if like Zero wins and he takes off his mask and he has a new mask. That'd be awesome.
Or like a Groucho mustache.
Or no, it's just inverted. Like the white is black and the black is white.
Yeah.
While we're on the subject, or did you have something about Camp Blue Frog there? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
While we're on the subject of indie wrestling, a lot of the Camp Leapfrog talent is going to be on another show next weekend called the Cassandro Cup. And this is going to be a tournament named after Cassandro, the famous Exotico in Mexico. And with that, it is a tournament of 8 wrestlers who are all LGBTQ+. And I think half or a little over half of the tournament are Camp Leapfrog vets. Wow. So you have AC Mack, who I don't believe is a Camp Leapfrog vet. I think he is more out of Georgia. You have Ashton Starr, who is also out of Georgia. Then you have Erica Lee, who, again, we have mentioned is in Camp Leapfrog. She won the Cibernetico, throws one hell of a suplex. The seatbelt, look, Google or Twitter, look up Erica Lee seatbelt suplex. It is amazing. And then you have Jared Evans. Again, I don't believe a Camp Leapfrog guy just yet. Joshua Waver, they are in Camp Leapfrog, one half of Oreo Speedwag. We always bring up their name. They've been there since the first show. Killian McMurphy is in the Cassandro Cup.
Cool.
And also Molly McCoy, another person who I think she's been around Camp Leapfrog since day one, episode 1, won Christmas Trios with Boomer Hatfield. And fresh off a new name change, Edith Surreal, formerly Still Life with Apricot Pears. Edith Surreal.
I like the name change. Was not a fan of the former name.
You didn't like Still Life, Apricots and Pears?
No, not at all.
I like Still Life.
I thought the name was cumbersome. The wrestler, she is amazing.
Yeah. Wrestler, she's very good, but the name I did not.
I just like Still Life. I mean, I didn't really.
That's okay, but I don't know.
Still Life is fun.
Makes me think of an abortion and stuff. I was like,
oh yeah.
I don't know. I never cared for.
I thought it was like a death metal band name.
It could be, yeah.
Edith Surreal sounds like a death metal band.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. But much.
That's a great name. A great new name, new identity. She will also be one of the announcers tomorrow for the Camper's Choice. It's going to be her and Sam Laterna.
Yeah, I want to give a quick shout out real quick. A lot of cool interviews have been going leading up to this. You can check out a few interviews that were done with Abs and Trajan Horn. We're on Wicked Turtle Network and the Brotherly Love podcast. I think I'm saying that right. I
hope it's a Brother Love podcast.
The Brotherly Love Wrestling podcast.
Okay.
They did one.
Who
with
was their guest this week?
It was Maximilian Zero.
Was the Brother Zero?
Yeah. So good shout out to those guys. I'm sure there's other people who were interviewed recently, but
we just don't know.
We do have a community page over. We're trying to get better on Twitter. We're growing that. We're growing on Instagram, but also we have a community page on Facebook.
Speaking of Twitter, somebody has finally joined Twitter.
Yeah. I made one with the sexual innuendo name of Get Some Header. So
I like it.
Yeah. And I have the best follower ever. Somehow John Cena follows me.
There you go.
So I don't know why.
You've made it.
But yeah.
I don't think
Give
I have
me the blue check because John Cena follows
I don't think I have any blue check followers.
I have a few.
Do you?
The Gin Blossoms, the old
90s.
The Gin Andy Kindler, who was on Everybody Loves Raymond. He was also on Bob's Burgers. He's Mort on Bob's Burgers. And the Lieutenant Governor of Pennsylvania and his wife follow me on Twitter.
Oh wow!
And his wife.
Yeah. It's weird how it works. I was just like going through and it's like local people. I'm like, John Cena. Okay.
That's
You know,
crazy.
So one other
But
thing
yeah.
while we have, oh, I'm
I
so
was gonna
sorry.
say, follow me at Get Some Header, and then when you're tweeting Leapfrog tomorrow,
yeah.
maybe mention me.
Yeah, and I just want to say too, our community page, we do allow a lot of podcasts to share their content on our page. So coming to our page is not just putting ourselves over. There's a lot of really good podcasts out there that share their content, and you can go check
Yeah,
those
or
guys
if you're a
out.
wrestler, plug yourself.
Yeah, put your merch
whatever.
pages up.
Yeah, a match maybe that you're proud of.
I very much so want to see matches.
Yeah.
Also, if you put your merch pages up, somebody sitting at this table in a black T-shirt is a huge sucker for T-shirts. So
buying shirts.
if you put merch pages up, there's a very high chance that you'll probably get.
There you
a
go.
sample.
There you go.
I'm
And
looking
then-
through our Twitter account to see who follows us.
One other thing about the Cassandra Cup, there's going to be a show in Tampa on WrestleMania weekend. They're going to have the IWTV Family Reunion, one of their big shows of the year. And the winner of the Cassandra Cup will be the first person to challenge the new IWTV champion, Lee Moriarty, for the title.
Nice. Cool.
Okay.
Who just recently beat Warhorse.
Yeah, how about him? Warhorse had it for a while.
Did he lose his
Yeah.
title?
Yeah, to Lee
Yeah, he-
Moriarty.
Oh,
Lee Moriarty won. He was the guy who wound up winning the Masked Wrestler, the tournament, where when you lost, you unmasked. He, Tony Deppen was in that tournament, and a few other people. Lady Frost was in the tournament. You had, I can't think of the guy's name, but a lot of high level talent. Kyle the Beast was in that tournament, and Lee Moriarty won it. He was Genkido, I think, or Gekido, and he unmasked right before the match, and he beat Warhorse.
So we did have an interview planned for tomorrow night. It's supposed to be Devontae's. There has been a little bit of a change in scheduling. It's definitely on our end. It wasn't him. He's still available to do it. But I'll be busy tomorrow night with the show, and doing stuff. And you'll be wrestling, obviously. And Brian has some stuff going on. So we are going to reschedule Devontae's interview for the very, very near future. So that's still coming. And then we have another interview that we have, but we haven't announced yet. We'll probably announce very, very soon as well. So the Devontae interview is still happening. I just want to definitely put out. It's not going to be tomorrow, but it's still coming very.
Tony
very
just
soon.
wants to do it closer to football season.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk. Some of those acquisitions that we just picked up here on our football team. But the Devontae interviews is still going to happen and still go on. But we're 22 minutes in. Let's get into our topic here.
Jim Crockett promotion.
So
Mothership.
I knew of Jim Crockett promotion.
Yes,
but I didn't follow Jim Crockett.
Well, I didn't because at the time people claim we did. Living in School County, we had Comcast, before Comcast, Time Warner, and we did not get any NWA or WCW until like 1994.
Because of the territories and
because of just how the channel. Someone said it was on the one channel from Philly. I'm like, well, I never seen it. As a kid, I would get TV Guide and look.
I don't know if you got Channel 17 from Philly, but worldwide was on Channel 17.
Okay, I might have, but like it was hard. Like we didn't get TBS. We didn't get TBS in Pottsville till like I think it was 94. It was before Nitro. Like a year before Nitro is when we got TBS.
Yeah.
So I watched Saturday night.
There's a lot of dirty business that went on here. That's kind of like don't come to our this is
in the territory system.
The territory system, and then one company is breaking out of territory system and just kind of was trying to swallow up everybody else. Looking at you, WWE. But from what I was looking, just kind of a sneak thing, Jim Crockett Promotions did really well in Philadelphia.
They did.
Baltimore was a big town for them as well.
Yeah. There would be times where Philadelphia was one of the few places there where both companies could draw like 10,000 fans pretty easily. They ran a smaller building. They ran the Philadelphia Civic Center because WWF had exclusive rights over the Spectrum, which is where the Flyers and the Sixers played. So they would run the Civic Center. And they did really well there. The first Halloween Havoc, that was post Crockett. That was when, I believe at that point, it was already owned by Turner. The first Halloween Havoc was there. They did another one a few years later, the one with the spin the wheel, make the deal. The first pay-per-view I was ever at was at the Civic Center. It was WCW Slamboree 1994.
Ooh.
I didn't realize that the Crockett promotion
Legends reunion.
Yes.
Okay.
The Crusher was there. So Vern Gagne was
there.
the Legends match though. The Legends match was Blanchard and Cherry Funk.
Wahoo? Oh, okay, because the one that was
93.
And when the legend match came on, it goes to black and white. I
Yeah,
was like,
yeah.
this is
No,
awesome.
That was the year before. That was 93.
Okay.
Yeah. I obviously grew up. I was born in '86. Started watching wrestling probably around 3 or 4 or 5 years old. Like I was introduced very young, and the toys were a big thing for me. But because of marketing and stuff, I was just a WWE kid.
Yeah.
So
Did you even know it existed? Because I didn't until I would start looking at wrestling magazines.
I think they talk about it very, very well on Jericho's podcast when it came to, especially like a northern kid, right? So if you're a northern
last
kid,
week, Jericho had Dave Meltzer and Tony Schiavone on talking.
Oh, that was Dave Meltzer,
Crockett.
the other guy?
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Talking Jim Crockett promotion. So very good podcast.
Yeah, Jericho didn't have really much to add there. It was pretty much
Dave and Tony Schiavone. I think that's why it had.
Yeah.
Both
You wind up Dave and he'll go.
Yeah,
It's like
Jericho wasn't there. So
does Dave Meltzer do his own podcast?
It's paywall.
We kept the pay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's if you go to f4wonline.com, I used to be comped, but they don't really comp their message board moderators anymore. We don't really moderate the message board anymore in response, so it's one of those things. But yeah, if you go to F4W Online, they do like free episodes every now and then, but they're mostly paywalled. Like it's
sometimes go on YouTube and
they sneak on YouTube like Howard Stern show.
But it's like $10.99 a month. They do a ton of podcasts there. It's not just them; they do a bunch of them, and then they do. You get the Wrestling Observer newsletter.
Do you think like Meltzer sounds like Ralph from the Howard Stern show?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought they sounded a lot alike.
I was talking to him today. I was like, I don't know who the other guy was because I was listening but not listening.
Yeah.
Oh, if you would have played for me, that's Meltzer. Yeah, I know his voice.
I could pick his voice. Yeah.
But they made a good idea of maybe why NWA wasn't so big for so many people and why they would get flocked to WWE better. WWE had the better presentation. It looked more professional.
Yes.
They had the marketing. They had the money. And Jim Crockett Promotions, it seems like, had great stuff, but couldn't get out of their own way. Like they would miss like really big spots on TV. Like the joke was in the podcast is like, oh, and tonight we have Dusty Rhodes here, and the camera never catches Dusty waving to the crowd.
Yeah.
So you hear a pop.
That would go on into WCW too.
Yeah. And then the other thing is too is like they didn't have the toys. They didn't have the T-shirts, the merchandising.
Merchandising was a step behind.
Yeah.
But when it came to in-ring quality, the matches were very good.
And then you would
there was bad ones too.
Yeah. And the same reason they talked about how they talked about the NWA and how I learned about a lot of those talent was the same way they talked about in the podcast. I used to buy the wrestling magazine.
Yep.
Now, a lot of times I couldn't find the WWE magazines, so I would get and they were cheaper at the time, but I don't remember the name of the magazine.
There was like Wrestling All Stars.
I believe that's what it was.
Inside Wrestling.
It always had
most of them were the Aftermags.
Yeah.
Pro Wrestling Illustrated, Inside Wrestling, The Wrestler.
It might have been the Aftermags. I don't remember. I'm very, very young. I just remember my mom would buy them every time we go to the store because it had a wrestler on the cover. And I just remember a lot of the magazine was black and white.
Yeah,
and it would just be like a full page spread of like Dusty or Ric Flair just bleeding.
Yeah, because everyone would be like,
just it would just be every other page was like a blood match.
And then I always have like the rankings in the back too, like NWA, and I would have studied them. Like, who are these people?
Well, I was a kid and I didn't read, right? But I liked tagging the magazines for the pictures and stuff. So I would just look at the photos and just be like, who is this guy? Well, I always be like, who is this old guy? Because he had the white hair. Again, I didn't realize that he was just that blonde. And I'd be like, and he just bleeds all the time. And then I remember watching like the Rumble when he came in. And I was just like, I think this guy's a big deal because every magazine I get, he's on.
Yeah.
And then I would just see guys like Sting and I'm like, oh, who are these guys? And then like when their toys and the cards kind of start getting bigger then it was bought by WCW. I didn't know WCW was a thing. And then I would see the toys and I'm like, well, who are these generic like knockoff dollar store versions of wrestlers, and they're legit toys. So I didn't know any better. I didn't really start following WCW until the N64 games. And then that's when the video games came out, and then the Monday Night Wars thing started. And then some of the kids from school started getting more, become smarter fans, and they started talking about Sting and Goldberg. And I was like, oh, that's a whole other company. And then I knew of the history, but I didn't follow it.
Yeah.
And then I was so brainwashed and I was so into, I only can watch one promotion. Yeah. And that didn't change for me until I got back into wrestling like maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, which is such a weird thought, because why don't watch everything you can? If you like it, I mean, if you don't like it, then don't watch it.
That's what I'm trying not to do now with that mistake is I'm trying to consume as much as I can. It's just very hard because I want to watch New Japan, but we have wrestling on every single day here in America. Yeah. It's like, holy shit, it's a lot.
Make time.
And I'm also trying to follow the independent scene.
Yeah.
Because
there's so much you could do.
Yeah, it's a lot going on. But yeah,
I didn't watch a majority of the shows till the network came out. But obviously the DVDs, because that was the network before the network, and you watch it, and there was like a Clash of Champions DVD, and there's a Dusty one. I'll see like matches like that.
Yeah.
But as soon as the network came out, I went back and started watching all the old NWAs from like '83. It was Mid Atlantic, and then when it goes to WCW, but it's still NWA, Jim Crockett Promotions.
Yeah,
and then a lot of them fly by like an hour and a half.
And
but
these
the promos
guys
are
would
so good.
come to WWE, and then they would kind of be jokes. Like they were
Sometimes
they were big, but they were never big.
And it was kind of like that they still say, "Well, I didn't create you, so when you don't get so high."
Exactly. So like I remember when Ric Flair first came to WWE or WWF. I remember everyone making a big deal about it. Like Ric Flair is
the
here,
real world champion,
and he won the championship in the Rumble. But to me, he still never shined like a Savage or a Hogan or a Piper or like those guys I just been inclined to. Like I was like, I don't see the big deal. But then again, he wasn't let off off the chain like he would if he was in WCW or Jim Crockett Promotions. And like Dusty came like, who's this? Like, not trying to body shame. I'm not a small guy, but who's this big fat guy in polka dots? Like, this is the biggest guy in wrestling, and everyone's like, love. Like,
they kind of made him a joke.
Exactly. So it's like they would come to these companies, and that never inspired me to go watch the other stuff. I'm like, so you want me to stop watching this to follow this guy back to WCW because I'm like, I watched him here. He's a joke.
Yeah.
You know, and I think a lot of people fall into that trope today with wrestling.
Probably.
Where like they're like, oh, like this. There's some guys who are like, I guess a lot of them get shit on, but like with AEW, like the AEW gets a WWE guy, they become the world champion. They're like, that's bullshit. Like, but a lot of those guys who have left and went to AEW, like I wasn't a huge Moxley fan. Like when he was Dean Ambrose, I wasn't sold on him. I wasn't sold on him until he was about to leave and he cut that one promo, and I was like, he's got some. He's
out the door
because he didn't care. And he cut that really good promo, and I was like, there's something here. And then he became Moxley, and I was like, I buy it. I'm into it. I always liked Luke Harper. I was always a Harper fan. When he won the IC title, I was so happy. I actually got to see him as Luke Harper.
Really held back.
Yeah, and then he went there. I'm like, this is great. Like,
so sometimes, people can really flourish.
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing with wrestling that I think they always say, learn your history so you don't repeat and make the same mistakes. And I think a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about here today will help today's modern wrestling fan not be so picky, because at this time with a lot of like the end of Crockett, like it was a dark time in wrestling where wrestling was not doing very well. It wasn't making money. People weren't like. Now we have wrestling on every day of the week, and you're gonna hold yourself back because you're loyal to a company.
Your fingertips in seconds,
and you're loyal to a company who will literally dime you out or your favorite wrestler out in a millisecond.
And you get no positives for being loyal to the company. You get nothing.
No.
So why not enjoy all the wrestling you can?
Exactly.
And if you don't watch it, you don't like it, then don't watch it again.
And it makes things like IWTV and the WWE Network amazing, because I remember being a kid and just and in the fortunate time that you would be the one to get the control of what channel you were watching, just flipping through each and every channel until you found wrestling.
Yeah,
like that's what I would do.
Like,
it could be like sometimes you would find World Class on ESPN or AWA on ESPN or a Clash of the Champions or something like that, or Glow. But now it's like it's all at your fingertips, and it is something that everybody takes for granted.
I would have consumed so much as a kid if I had the network then, or even YouTube.
I'd be a scholar. I'd be Brian. I'd be a scholar.
I would know infinitely more, but I had the magazines, and whenever you could rent a video or buy a video, that's all you had.
It blows me away how limited wrestling knowledge was to me. And Brian has me about a couple of years, but he's just like a fucking encyclopedia. Like if he would have had that then, Jesus Christ,
we'd all know everything. We would have seen every pay-per-view ever.
Brian would be Dave Meltzer.
Yeah.
I still think you can be the next Dave Meltzer. That's just my opinion. I think your wrestling knowledge is that impressive. I'm being honest. And
I know a thing or two about a thing or two.
You got any sources?
Yeah, Brian.
That's what you need.
Yeah, you're complimented a lot, even on in private conversations I have with people, where people are very, very impressed with your knowledge, and they enjoy listening to you. Yeah, a lot of people like. I think you're becoming the star of TTP. We can just me and Andy will just turn our camera off. And, yeah.
That's why I have my own personal studio.
Yeah. he's too.
I'm big time in these two over here.
Yeah. Big time.
I didn't want to make an inappropriate joke saying you're too big for us.
Superstar.
Well, that too.
All right. Well, let's get into Crockett Promotions. I think we've built this up enough, but let's get into it here.
So let's go way back to 1909.
Ooh,
1909.
Before electricity.
Yeah. I think there was still dinosaurs.
And that is when Big Jim Crockett was born, James A. Crockett Sr., who is the patriarch of the Crockett family. And he was born in Bristol, Virginia. You think the Crockett's think the Carolinas, but Big Jim was from Virginia, and he was a big guy. He was very tall, well over 300 pounds. So
Wow.
he was Big Jim before Little Jim was even born. And so he partners up with a guy named Pete Moore when he's in his very early 20s, and they form the Southeastern Corporation, which is just something that's going to start promoting concerts and back then was big band. Big band was a thing in the 30s, and the thing that really moved their money though was wrestling. The wrestling was what paid the bills. A lot of these things, like wrestling was never prestigious. It was always kind of like people would look down upon it a little bit. Freddie Prinze Jr., I don't know if anybody saw this, but he very recently was heaping a lot of praise on Triple H and Cody Rhodes specifically. And he was saying, like, you don't understand if you're not in the entertainment business. Every TV network executive hates wrestling. They don't want wrestling on their show, on their networks. And the work that these two guys have done, and Vince McMahon and Tony Khan, to get wrestling where it is amazing, and they should be commended for it.
Holy shit.
Not to interrupt. Yeah, the butts and seats of Tony Schiavone's store on Kickstarter is up to $67,000. So
their goal was 20 grand.
Yeah, I bet you Tony's ecstatic.
So this real quick, if you're into this topic we're about to talk about tonight, you can go on Kickstarter.com right now, and Travis McIntyre, am I saying that right?
McIntyre, probably.
McIntyre? I'm an idiot. Sorry. Is doing a autobiography comic book. Is it just a one-off?
Yes. So it's a fully contained story in one thing. You can get a soft cover, a hardcover. It's like a trade paperback. It's the story of Tony Schiavone, how he came up in the business.
And a lot of it he talks about is Jim Crockett Promotions, and
that's where he started.
Yeah, and has his whole, pretty much gives him a lot of credit on him coming up and a lot of his experiences. So if you want to see what we're talking about in comic book form through the eyes of Tony Schiavone, because if you don't love Tony Schiavone, you're fucking up. Yeah, so you can go Kickstarter. You can go to that on Kickstarter right now and buy it. I believe you'll probably get it cheaper on Kickstarter than when it finally drops.
And you get ahead of time. It's called Butts and Seats. So just go to Kickstarter.
Butts and Seats by Tony, the Tony Schiavone story. I'm actually going to do it as you're talking, Brian. Go ahead.
All right. So yeah, by the 30s, they're in Greensboro. Moore and Crockett are in Greensboro, and Moore gets bought out. And Bill Lewis is another partner of Jim Crockett Sr. that eventually Crockett buys out and gets full control of. So in 1940, Greensboro was always, even though Charlotte's like the first city you think of in North Carolina, the first city you think of probably when you think of Jim Crockett Promotions or WCW even, well, maybe Atlanta by then.
Yeah.
The for Jim Crockett Promotions, the centerpiece, the crown jewel was always Greensboro.
Yeah, Greensboro. That's where they had like
Coliseum.
Christmas show and everything, right?
Yeah, Christmas show, Starcade. The first two Starcades were, well, the second Starcade, it was like Greensboro and Atlanta, I think. But yeah, Greensboro, that was their home base. That was what New York was to WWE. That's what Philly was to ECW. What Minneapolis was to AWA. That was their home. And in 1940, Crockett bought and renovated a building called Niece's Hall on Washington and Davies Streets in Greensboro, and that became the home base. They basically built their own arena. They would do concerts there. They would do boxing, ice capades down the line, live theater, but wrestling paid the bills. Wrestling was the thing.
Oh, cool.
And it was every Wednesday night. It was like how in Memphis, Monday night was the Mid-South Coliseum. They did the weekly wrestling show in Greensboro every Wednesday.
Like one of the things I kind of wish was still around. Because you really think, that sounds crazy. Well, Raw's every Monday. Dynamite's every Wednesday. It's like, it's not too crazy.
It's not out of the realm.
Yeah.
And they would keep the ticket prices cheap.
That's kind of happening now with Dynamite, like Dynamite and NXT. Like there's people are allowed to be there right now, but because of the pandemic, it's making it a lot more exclusive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not touring. And it used to be like you would have, like I know for Memphis, I think you would have your loop. Like they do Memphis on Monday, then would be like one other town on the loop on Tuesday. You had your towns you would hit. And they would hit the same towns every week, but they kept them coming back. So that's Greensboro, but we always have to talk about Charlotte. And one of the early Charlotte, North Carolina. The first wrestling promoter that really got a foothold there was a guy named John Irish Horan. Hey, Johnny Horan.
Yeah.
Not Moran. Horan. Irish Horan.
The whole joke we did didn't stick last time because the audio messed up.
Yeah.
I think it was before the show, actually.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, Irish Horan was a guy who came into Charlotte and said he was a former wrestler and boxer. He was a matchmaker at the original Madison Square Garden, this decorated wrestler. He was none of these things. He was a carny. Literally came from the carnivals like a lot of early wrestlers did. and was just a con man. Like, just totally made this up. People bought it, and he became the guy who ran wrestling. He made these big promises. The biggest name in wrestling around this time in the late 1930s, and really
George
one of the
Schmidt?
no, that was way before that. That was like 1909.
Yeah.
It was Jim Londos.
You could check out Haran and Friends on the high tension.
That's Moran and Friends.
Oh, and friends.
Irish Moran.
I
He
don't
should have
think
did that.
Irish
Too. He should have did that for St. Patrick's
Yeah,
Day.
I don't think Irish Haran is doing a podcast right now.
I doubt he's with us.
Yeah.
But yeah, he the biggest star back
hard
then. The biggest star back then was Jim Londos. He was
Okay.
this predates the NWA title. They would just call it the world heavyweight title in different places, recognized as different champions. He was a champion for about 6 years and retired as champion. And Irish Haran was promising he was going to bring Jim Londos to Charlotte. He never did. He instead built the promotion around Joe Bonaski, who was his supposed protege. And he would have a lot of smaller guys. Like he would push a lot of the smaller guys, including Bonaski. The crowd didn't really like Joe Bonaski. They didn't think he was believable. One of the articles said he looked pitiful until he won the match. And Haran also wasn't really making friends with the Charlotte Boxing Commission. They wanted to make sure all the shows were doing well because they got a cut of the gate. So Irish Haran would want to run wrestling the same night as boxing, and it would split the audience. And they didn't like that. And eventually they found out, one of the sports reporters, who I think was also on the commission, found out, hey, this guy's nothing of what he says he is. He's not a wrestler. He was never in Madison Square Garden. So he gets pushed out the door. But even with, the empty promises, wrestling was doing well. Wrestling did sell tickets. So like, we would like to still have wrestling in Charlotte. Hey, that guy Crockett in Greensboro is doing pretty good there. Let's have him do it here too.
Yeah,
And
not that far away.
No, not at all. And so that opens the doors for Jim Crockett Promotions to be in control of Greensboro and Charlotte, and they would expand in like South Carolina, other parts of the North Carolina. And when in 1949, 48-49 is when the modern day NWA forms in St. Louis, and Jim Crockett Promotions is very early adopting to it, and they join in 1950. And the Crockett's are basically synonymous from there on with live entertainment in Charlotte and Greensboro, like ice capades, concerts, plays, everything we're talking about. But wrestling is still the big thing. That's when you had guys like Nelson Royal, Rip Hawk, the Kentuckians, who were like this tag team, like the Hillbillies.
I wonder where they're from.
They probably weren't really
Iowa.
from Kentucky. They're probably from like upstate New York. They're from like where MJF's from.
North Dakota.
Don't bring up that state. So Jim Crockett Sr. unfortunately does pass away on April 1st, 1973. He had been in failing health for a little while, and his son-in-law, and this sounds similar. His son-in-law was the one being groomed to take over the company. John Wrigley, who was the wife of his only daughter, Frances Crockett, he was doing a lot of the business because Jim Sr. wasn't in the best health in the early 70s, so he was doing a lot of the business anyway. And he seemed poised to take over, but the decision was made largely because I believe at that time they found out that John Wrigley was having an affair, and him and Frances Crockett doing divorce.
A woman couldn't run a wrestling company.
Oh no! Well, we'll be fair to Frances Crockett in a second here.
Yeah.
Frances Crockett did okay.
Yeah,
but
I think that was a stigma too. That's why they were going with the brother-in-law, because they didn't want to couldn't have a woman.
Yeah, and she was and she was younger too, because I think Jim is the oldest. If Frances might be a little older, but Jim Jr. was only 28 at the time, so he's getting the keys to the kingdom at 28 years old. Yeah, and John Wrigley and Frances Crockett did soon divorce, and this was very, very, very much a family business. It wasn't some huge conglomerate. It was a family business. Jim and all the Crockett's really had a say, and Jim was kind of the head, but David Crockett was very involved. Jackie Crockett, who was her other brother, was involved, and they were involved till the very end. They were involved in WCW. David was most famously an announcer and did some stuff with production behind the scenes. I don't think he really did a lot of announcing once it became WCW. He was more behind the scenes. And Jackie Crockett was to the very, very end of WCW, still out there every week. He was a cameraman. He did photography ringside. So the Crockett's, those Crockett's were still around to the very end. And we did kind of bring up Frances Crockett. And yeah, she didn't really have a whole lot of say in the wrestling side of things. She was more interested in another one of Jim Crockett Promotions ventures. They didn't just do wrestling. Wrestling was like their bread and butter, but they also did other sports. And in 1976, they bought the Asheville Orioles, which was a AA minor league baseball team. They moved them to Charlotte. They renovated this stadium that was there called Griffith Park. They renamed it Crockett Park. And she was the team's general manager for 10 years and won 2 Southern League titles.
How about that? And that's how they found Tony Schiavone, because he was working with them.
Baseball announcer, yeah. And so Francis Crockett was the one in the family that really was involved in with the baseball team. And the Crockett's did have some involvement in the short-lived Southern Hockey League. A lot of these tiny hockey leagues popped up around this time. And they had a team called the Winston-Salem Polar Twins. The name of the trophy for this league, and this is before the one for the tag team tournament, was called the Crockett Cup.
Oh, nice.
So the original Crockett Cup was a hockey trophy. There's a little bit of trivia for you. The things you learn on this show that you wouldn't learn anywhere else.
Yeah.
I can't imagine hockey doing that well in the southern states at that time.
It didn't. It still doesn't. They've tried it. They've tried hockey in Atlanta 3 times now. It hasn't worked.
It's just something southern people, they ain't that.
Yeah. No.
Probably because there isn't ice outside. You know?
Well, it's one of those things too. It's like if it's not a sport you could play all year round, they don't want to hear it.
Yeah.
So like football and baseball and basketball, like you can grab that and you can play all year round.
But even like in the South, like you might not be able to have outdoor ice at any time of the year. Like in Florida, you never see ice.
And one of the tough things with hockey too is it's a if you're doing like indoor like on a rink, it's a fairly expensive sport to get involved in because of all the equipment.
You know what's a shockingly expensive sport if you want to play in like top league teams? Soccer in America. Like a lot of, I know like Hope Solo kind of got some heat for saying it, but she's like, most of your professional soccer players are rich kids because their parents can afford to put them in like soccer camps and
Yeah.
She goes, a lot of the people like you don't even realize how many people are so talented at this sport in our country because it's paywalled.
Yeah,
like a lot
of
that.
Which is so funny because if you go to like England, soccer is like the common person's game. And they do have these academies and things like that. And usually they're scouting people, but everybody just plays it in the street anyway because it's such more ingrained in their culture. Like how we would play, like, because soccer in England is like football, baseball, basketball here combined. So
yeah, you walk up, they have like you know how we have outdoor basketball parks? They have like outdoor street concrete soccer park. It's awesome.
Yeah,
but over there, rugby is like the elitist game. That's like you have to be like this upper crusty person.
Which is crazy because like you're dying.
It's a tougher soccer, right? I mean,
it's a nonstop running like soccer, but the physicality of American football.
Yep.
So, like you don't really stop and set plays up like American football.
Yeah.
It's just like it's kind of like there's a game that we used to play back in the day, but it had a homophobic name to it.
Kill the guy with the ball, we'll call it.
Yes, that's pretty much in a nutshell what rugby is. But then, like when you get tackled, there's a system of how you dismantle the ball to the other team.
Okay.
We were a little more refined. We called this rumble fumble.
Oh,
rumble fumble. I wish we called it that. We're growing up in my town. We definitely used the improper name. But that's kind of like rugby. But like it's like going back to soccer. Like I tried out for a team, like when I was just about to go into high school. And I was picked pretty high. Like the guy came up to me and goes, like, "You're really good. Like we like your ability." Like the crazy thing is, the team I was on growing up, we had a lot of really talented players. Like our small little town from Shenandoah, and I think there's 6 kids on our team who tried out. They wanted all 6 of us. Unfortunately, when it came time to picking the people, and I had to get pulled aside and talk, like by the time, and this wasn't counting travel, hotel, and fees to get into tournaments. Just my jerseys alone. We were looking up over $800.
Really? Oh my God.
And my parents are like,
"Yeah, no,
I'm sorry, you can't play this." And I was like, "But I got picked." And she's like, "We can't afford it." And then like we have to drive you to like Jersey and North Carolina to play in an indoor tournament and put you up in a hotel room for
not many people can afford that. I mean, they love their kids, but that's a lot to ask for. You know,
that was the end of my soccer for the most part.
A couple hours.
Yep.
Yeah. My cousin's a hockey mom, and she spent lots of weekends like driving up to like upstate New York, and it's a hustle.
Expensive.
And even with all these other things the Crockett's are doing, it's wrestling. Wrestling is their business, and wrestling is what's keeping them not afloat. I'm sure they're doing well with some other things, but wrestling is what's really earning the money. And Jim Jr. Kept the booker that John Ringley had brought in the company, which was George Scott. George Scott is probably the most famous booker of Mid-Atlantic. And bookers and promoters back then, if you look at it, they tended to build companies in their own image. Like, think of Vince McMahon. He's always been in the bodybuilding, so he likes the big guys. Vern Gagne liked amateur wrestlers. Bill Watts, like tough guys and ex-football players. George Scott did the same thing. George Scott, he was a wrestler himself, and he was part of a very successful tag team. It was him and his brother Sandy Scott, and they were called the Flying Scots, which was a play on their last name being Scott, and they were also Scottish. So it had like one of those double meanings.
I think my wrestling company would be a lot like Tony Deppin's show that's coming soon, where it's in a brewery and everyone drinks and wrestles.
that just as long as they don't drink too much before they wrestle. It doesn't sound that safe.
Yeah.
Sandman hurt a lot of guys. Mick Foley did not like wrestling Sandman.
I don't think they actually drink before the show, but
I hope
Tony Deppin's doing. I think to combat what fell apart going into WrestleMania weekend that Tony had an open challenge going into. I think another company was like, well, we still want Tony Deppin to come down here and do something. So they're doing like a
beer
brewery,
house,
like a beer.
What company wouldn't want Tony Deppin to do something? You got
exactly. And he also, real quick, if you're a wrestling fan and you're local and you're a Tony Deppin fan, Tony Deppin has a brewery opening up very, very soon in downtown Pottsville, Pennsylvania, called Pilgaroo Brewing Company. They make amazing beer. If you're a beer fan, they make really, really good beers. They have a Kickstarter going on. It's not a Kickstarter. I forget the name of the
logo. No, this is something different. This is something very interesting, actually, because at this point, they're not asking for donations. They're asking for an investment. And there is like an actual, like, I think it's for every $100 you donate, they're promising by like, and it's a certain year down the line because it's going to be off their profits. But I think like 2026, something like that, you're supposed to get at minimum, or I think, and it might not be a minimum, you're supposed to get 180 back for every 100 you donate. So you're actually investing in a business, and then the idea is you would get your money back at the end.
Yeah. And like I said, Pilgaroo Brewing Company, that's Pilgeruh Brewing Company. And Tony Deppin's one of the three owners, or one of the two owners. I think there's 3. It's two brothers.
I'm not sure,
and then Tony. But it's coming very, very soon. So if you're in the School County area, or you're coming to visit or anything like that, or you want to support him in another way, just not wrestling, go check that out. Really, really excited about that.
Once that opens, and once I get a little shot in the arm here, you might be seeing me down there.
Oh, there you go. I'll be there a lot. Sorry, a little side tangent there.
So anyway, with the Scots, like because George Scott was such a tag team wrestler, the Mid-Atlantic, the reputation they had was Mid-Atlantic was the tag team territory. That was the big thing. Their main angles, their main things were tag teams. Kind of like even more so than what AEW does, because AEW does really feature tag teams a lot more prominently than WWE really ever has. This was even bigger than that. Like your main events were usually tag matches. But that's not to say they didn't have their single stars. And a lot of them were like tag guys as well. Like Ric Flair is going to be the big one. But you had like Johnny Valentine, Roddy Piper, Wahoo McDaniel, all huge stars. But the biggest one is the guy I just mentioned. I kind of spoiled it there. Very close with Jim Crockett Jr. Jim Crockett Jr. was the best man at Ric Flair's second wedding.
Wow.
So they were very close.
There's someone that they announced, I learned in the podcast, that Ric Flair tagged with, that I had no idea he ever tagged with ever.
Big John Studd?
No, they said he used to tag with Rick Steiner a lot. Like early on. Yeah, they said
early on, or sure.
I don't know about early on because Rick Steiner didn't start until the 80s.
Yeah, and Ric Flair started in like 70.
You mean Rick Steamboat?
Towards the end.
Steamboat?
I thought they said Ricky Steiner. Maybe it might be Steamboat then. I apologize.
Steamboat would be make a little more sense time-wise.
I know he wrestled Steamboat a lot.
Yeah, especially in the 70s, and then they had their feud in the 80s.
I don't think because Rick Steiner.
Did he start like 88?
He started. Well, no, that's when he got to NWA. I think the first things you'll see him doing, because I think there's things in Mid-South.
I apologize. It's Steiner. I mean, not Steiner. Steamboat. Yeah.
Yeah. Then they're very much more famous for being like a feud. That's probably Ric Flair's, if not his most famous feud, one of them. But yeah, Rick Steiner. The first thing I think you can see him, and it was on the network. I don't know when it's going to be on Peacock, but I think he was one of those guys where you can see Rob Rex Steiner wrestling as an enhancement guy on Mid-South, like how. If you look at some of those old ones, you'll see Marty Lundy, and he's using the name Marty Lundy.
And what was Boss Man's name when he was like a job guy? And then they took him off. We brought him back as Bubba Ray.
I forget what they called him. Yeah. And then if you look at some of the older Mid-Atlantic episodes, because some of the Mid-Atlantic from like 81 to 83, again, it's on the network until the network goes away, and then hopefully it'll be on Peacock.
I listened to a podcast also that was talking about the heat between Scott Steiner and Ric Flair.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I blended the two together.
And Rick Steiner also comes into play, and we'll cover this toward the end of this, in the heat between Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes.
Yeah.
But to get there, we have to go through the 70s and the early 80s. And that's when the Jim Crockett Promotions is really expanding. They're doing really well here.
Mhm.
And Ric Flair is a breakaway star. They have Wahoo McDaniel's a huge star. They have so many huge stars. And they're starting to expand a little bit. So it was mainly like Asheville, Greensboro, Charleston, South Carolina. North and South Carolina was their territory. But in the 70s and early 80s, they're expanding a little bit in the Eastern Tennessee, in the West Virginia, North Georgia, parts of Virginia, I think, and kind of bumping up against Georgia Championship Wrestling to the south, to Lawler and Jarrett to the west, and then to the east, I guess, the McMahon territory. I think McMahon had Baltimore. Oh, yeah, he had DC because that's where Vince Sr. was running out of. And then they're also expanding with other companies. Crockett and George Scott bought a stake in Maple Leaf Wrestling, which was Frank Tunney's promotion in Toronto. People might know Jack Tunney a little better. That was Frank's nephew that took over when Frank Tunney died. But Crockett and George Scott had like a 33% interest in Maple Leaf Wrestling, which when Jack Tunney took over and he flipped over to WWF, that was a big legal thing. They wound up getting settled out of court. And Jim Crockett, Ric Flair, and Blackjack Mulligan bought the Knoxville territory from the Jarretts, and they started a very, very short-lived secondary territory there too. That didn't do so well. And in 1980, Jim Crockett Jr. was elected the president of the NWA, replacing Kansas City promoter Bob Geigel. So up until this point, it's been a slow build. We didn't really cover it a lot. But through the 70s and even the late 60s, they did well, but they weren't really a force in wrestling, in the NWA. And definitely not with the NWA title. If you look through, Harley Race was the big one. He was out of the Kansas City office. St. Louis was always the seat of power. Sam Mushnick there. Bob Geigel and Race in Kansas City. You had Eddie Graham in Florida, very powerful. The Von Erichs. Fritz Von Erich was extremely powerful. The Funks. That's how Terry and Dory Funk Jr. both had title runs. And Harley Race was kind of firmly entrenched as your guy. And again, he's out of Kansas City. And
Don
what's happening...
I bought a Terry Funk shirt off
Don
of
Owen,
Millie.
For what?
Millie. She was selling the Terry Funk. It was
okay,
a 2XL.
Cool. Oh, nice. Was it the Funk You one?
Yeah.
Oh, nice. Those are great.
Yeah.
And so as this is happening, Jim Crockett is slowly building power, and the buying into the Maple Leaf thing is a big part of it. And now he's the president. And in 1981, it's going to be a lot of changes. Some good things happen, some bad things happen. George Scott left Jim Crockett Promotions after a pay dispute, and they brought in Ole Anderson as a booker, which was kind of interesting because Ole was also a promoter in Georgia. You had Georgia Championship Wrestling. I think we brought up the Gunkel thing before, where Ray Gunkel died, and then his wife Ann tried to do a promotion, and then Ole Anderson and the Briscoes and these other guys like competed, and they wound up winning and pushing Ann Gunkel out. So Ole Anderson's kind of controlling Georgia now, but he's also running Georgia, wrestling in Georgia, but now he's also going to book Mid-Atlantic for Jim Crockett.
Is the Four Horsemen a stable at this time?
No, that was in 85, I want to say. 84, 85. Okay. So, in fact, Arn Anderson is, I think this is around the time he's Marty Lundy in, he was Marty Lundy. He was in Mid-South, and he was Marty Lundy, who was like an underneath guy, and then he became Super Olympia. He wore a mask, and he was with this guy, Mr. Olympia, Jerry Stubbs, and they were a tag team, and then they feuded with each other. And then they did the whole thing where he said he was I think they said he was Gene and Lars's cousin, and then Ric Flair was also their cousin. Everybody was a cousin back then. Yeah. Like, that was what Ric Flair wanted. He wanted to be Dusty Rhodes' cousin. He wanted his name to be Ramblin' Ricky Rhodes.
Yeah.
So speaking of Ric Flair, the big thing, the milestone that happens in 1981 is that Ric Flair is the first guy to bring the NWA World Title to Jim Crockett Promotions as a home guy who calls that promotion his home base, being the champion, and he wins it in 1981. And then they built from there, and Flair was champion for about a year. He lost it back to Race, but that was really more of an angle than anything. And Bob Geigel wound up from the Kansas City office, wound up being the president of the NWA again. But Jim Crockett has some big plans now, and Harley Race wins the title back just so they can set up a rematch where Flair wins it again. And that's going to happen at the biggest show that the Crockett's ever done, and really something that changed wrestling to this day. Because you always had the granddaddy of them all.
Yeah.
You had your super shows before this, like the big Shea Stadium show. They would do stadium shows in New Orleans and in Tampa and places like that. Anywhere where the weather was nice and had a baseball stadium, they would try to run a big show. But Starrcade was different. It was their annual Thanksgiving show that was always the big Crockett show, was always Thanksgiving night. You would have your Thanksgiving dinner, and then you would go to the Greensboro Coliseum to watch wrestling. But Starrcade was closed circuit across all of their territory, theaters all over North Carolina, South Carolina, everywhere they would go. And the big thing here is that Ric Flair again wins the NWA title from Harley Race in a cage. And it's really changing wrestling to that everything's building to this super show, because it's not more than a year and a half after this that we get WrestleMania, and it's not more than, and then Starrcade becomes an annual thing, and then pay-per-view comes in a few years later. And Starrcade was also another big booking change. Ole was out at this point. Ole was not booking. And around Starrcade, it was around the time that Dusty Rhodes, he was the biggest babyface in wrestling until Hulk Hogan blew up. And Dusty Rhodes was also a big creative guy in Florida with Eddie Graham. Eddie Graham was like the man. Eddie Graham, if you talk to old school people, they're going to say he's one of the greatest creative minds that wrestling ever had.
Finnish guy.
And Dusty kind of learned under him. But this was Dusty's chance to get the book, to be in control of a territory. And so things changed. And then so Flair won the title as a babyface, but he's going to slowly go heel. And that's where the Horsemen form. The Horsemen was when they had a match. It was, I want to say it was, I could be getting this wrong. It was going to be Flair and Dusty against the Russians. And then Flair turned, on Dusty, and Flair, Arn, Ole, and Blanchard all beat down Dusty in the cage, and they were keeping the Russian, and they were keeping all the baby faces from getting into the cage. And I think that's how the Four Horsemen formed, because by Starrcade '84, you're doing Flair against Dusty.
Were they the horse? Like, did they say did they throw up a four?
Not
that night.
Yeah.
It was I think Arn actually mentioned it in a promo. Was it a promo? I think it was Arn that said it.
When he said something, we're the Four Horsemen of professional wrestling. Like not saying this is the name.
I don't even think it was that. I think he said not since the Four Horsemen, talking about the Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, the biblical Four Horsemen, not since the Four Horsemen have so few caused so much destruction or something like that. It was a really good line.
Was it like the fans then kind of gravitated to Four Horsemen and stuff?
Yeah, and it kind of, I don't think a marketing department thought it up like they would do now for a
I wish they did stuff more like that. Like, for example, they obviously AEW tries to bring back a lot of these old storylines, and Pinnacle, they're saying is going to be like the new Four Horsemen, but they already have their name Pinnacle, or like the Nightmare Family.
Yeah.
Like sometimes just let things without a name and let it develop kind of let the fans kind of see what catches. Cause you're trying to sometimes you're trying to force something when it happens, not like Degeneration X happened organically because he goes, you're a bunch of degenerates. And they're like, Degeneration X, you know what I mean?
I think that might have been a little more planned than that, but yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, but even if it was the way it was set up, it would sound. It
was set up to make it sound organic. Yeah,
more organic.
And I guess now WWE tries to do that where it comes off organic.
We have this idea for a group. It is this name, and
or they say it 400 times.
Yeah, and they beat it over your head, and then you hate it.
Exactly. Or where they try to where they're telling you the name of the stable as it's forming in the ring.
Yeah, which I don't like that at all.
The retribution.
You should always wait a little bit.
Exactly. Let it come naturally. Because I said, the Four Horsemen stuck.
They totally did that with the X.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I was thinking of when you were talking about that was when Steve Austin wins that King of the Ring and he's saying Austin 316 says, I just whipped your ass. They're not having him say, go say that, because that's going to be the thing that sells 1 million t-shirts, is going to make you the biggest star in the history of wrestling. That wasn't in anybody's head.
Yeah,
that t-shirt is still the number. If you put that t-shirt on a shelf, it'll still sell. Austin 316. It's just it'll never go away. It's like a Hulkamania shirt.
Yeah,
it'll probably
NWO.
last longer than a Hulkamania shirt.
Yeah, probably. So just jumping back to the Crockett thing. Things are going well after Starrcade '83, but things are also about to change. Vincent Kennedy McMahon, the Vince McMahon we all know.
This is where things get dirty.
Yep. Yes. Yeah. Well, the NWA did some dirty stuff too. Don't get that's not this story, but the NWA did some dirty stuff too. But Vincent Kennedy McMahon bought the Capital Wrestling Corporation, which was the parent company of his father's version of the WWF, in 1982. But his Titan Sports did continue kind of business as usual through most of '83. It's not like Vince bought the company and all of a sudden I'm taking over the world.
God damn it.
It was a little bit of a slower build, but that does change in '83. And I think that's when Vince's father was in ill health, or he may have even passed at that point. And Vince his top lieutenant at the time was Jim Barnett, my boy.
Jimsy.
Who was, you know how they always call Don Callis like that invisible hand that's kind of working everything behind the scenes? That was Jim Barnett. Jim Barnett was a very famous promoter in his own right, very famous booker. He had the original World Championship Wrestling in Australia. He was very close friends with Jimmy Carter, the president, Jimmy Carter.
Now, would Vince trust him with booking, or would he still meddle?
He didn't book. George Scott was actually the booker for WWF at this time. And Vince would meddle. Vince would always have the final say, but George Scott would be like putting things together. Jim Barnett was more of the business side of things. Jim Barnett was more like a deal maker and just kind of brokering things, making things happen behind the scenes. He wasn't like more on the creative end.
Mm-hmm.
And Vince and Jim Barnett arrive at the NWA meeting. They would have this big convention in Vegas every year. All the NWA promoters would get together in Vegas, and he comes in just to say, I'm out. Because even though WWF was separate, at this point, they'd had their own champion for about 20 years, going back to Buddy Rogers and Bruno Sammartino. Even though they weren't part of the NWA, and they didn't recognize the NWA champion as their world champion, Vince Sr. still held a seat on the board, Vincent J. McMahon. He was still held in very, very high esteem by everybody in NWA. He didn't mess with their territory. They didn't mess with his. And they would do talent exchanges. Dusty Rhodes would wrestle superstar Billy Graham. It was very harmonious, even though they weren't really together. Usually when people would break off at that point, it was because they wanted somebody else to be champion. Vern Gagne broke off and started the AWA because he wanted to be champion. He didn't want Lou Thesz to be champion. He wanted to be champion. And Wally Carbo, too. It was Vern and Wally Carbo. Vince Sr. broke off because Lou Thesz was very respected and very did very well as champion in like St. Louis and all those areas, but in the more glitz and glamour, New York, Philly, like Boston, like the Northeast, Buddy Rogers was a much bigger draw than Lou Thesz. So usually when they would break off here, it wasn't like a disrespect or a war. It was just that we want this guy to be our champion. He's going to be a better fit. This is Vince declaring war. And this is Vince saying, I'm coming after your territories. I'm competing with you. The days of everybody has their own little space and nobody's going to cross the line, that's over. And so that's what he does. He would steal wrestlers, especially from the AWA. He took so many people from the AWA: Bobby Heenan, Gene Okerlund, Hulk Hogan, Dave Schultz. He takes Roddy Piper from I don't know if he was in Mid-Atlantic or Portland or where he was at that point. The Briscoes from Georgia. Everybody.
Yeah, you said Ted DiBiase, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ted DiBiase's a little bit later. Yeah, it was around like 87.
Well, Ted and
Hacksaw Jim Duggan. They were in
UWF. They were with Bill Watts.
Yeah.
And yeah, everybody. The only guys he couldn't really get were like Flair. Flair never really jumped until way later. The Von Erichs, because they were working for their dad. But yeah, Harley Race he held out for a long time. We went back to Starrcade 83. That was when it was starting, and apparently there was Vince was trying to pay Harley Race to not drop that title to Flair. Come to me, bring the title to me. And Harley Race would not do it. He told Vince, like, because I think they were in like a bathroom or something, or somewhere where there was a mirror. And he points to the mirror. He's like, Vince, what do you see in that mirror? He's like, I see you. It's like, that's what I have to see in the mirror every day. And he's like, I'm not doing it. So
Classic
yeah,
move.
I mean, he did jump later, but yeah, at that point,
he probably did it when the company had nothing else for him, and then he left.
He did it. Well, he was also office. Like a lot of the guys who didn't leave were either like Ric Flair, where they were really taken care of and very close to the promoter, or Dusty, who was a booker, Ole, who was a booker and promoter. Race had a piece in the Kansas City office, and he came over when that Kansas City office died. Yeah. And Terry Funk came over when the Amarillo territory died. And Jerry Lawler, he held out forever because Memphis was really the last territory standing besides Crockett becoming WCW. But yeah, so for some of these guys, it was war now. It was war, and Crockett did a better job than most of like keeping their people. Some people left later. Rick Rude left. He was like actually a tag champion when he left. At the very end of it, Blanchard and Arn Anderson left, but they did a pretty good job of holding on to their guys.
Mm-hmm.
But the big thing that happens here is Vince is also like, because the way that TV would work at that point is that the wrestling companies didn't get paid to do the TV shows. They would do the TV shows for free. The TV company was happy because we're getting free programming. Wrestling usually did very, very well in the ratings, really well in the ratings. They were getting it for free, and all the wrestling companies wanted was, we want to just basically use it as a commercial to sell tickets to our arena shows.
Yeah.
Vince would come in and would say, I will pay you like whatever $2,000 a week to not air Mid-Atlantic and air my show instead, air All-Star Wrestling or Superstars or whatever it would be. So he would buy these time slots from people.
Of course, we get the content and money.
Yeah.
Why not?
You're gonna pay us, and you're gonna give us content. Yeah, and I don't think he was paying like infomercial prices, but yeah, he would buy the time slots from people, and that's what he did with Georgia Championship Wrestling. Because at this point, one of the things that's forcing the national expansion is that cable is a thing now. Cable TV is a thing. And you can be on TBS or USA.
You know where that was invented?
Right over the mountain there.
Monty City, Pennsylvania.
Absolutely, yeah. And you didn't have TBS until 1994.
Yeah. Service electric, baby.
So with cable, with TBS, with USA, ESPN, you could be on across the country with cable. And so WTBS, which was a local station in Georgia owned by Ted Turner, they wanted to become a super station. So they took their local Atlanta station.
Think about that now. TBS.
Yeah, that's how it started.
Name a show on TBS that you watch weekly.
Nothing. I haven't watched TBS probably since Saturday Night left.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think the last thing I'm going to watch on TBS.
I think they have like reruns of, I don't know, Seinfeld or something.
Yeah, Big Bang Theory. I think they do a lot of comedy reruns.
Yeah, the Superstation.
It's like all like old syndicated shows they replay.
Yeah, well, they have Atlanta Braves games still, right?
I don't know.
Maybe not. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't think so. I think that's nationalized now.
Wow.
And I don't think they own the Braves anymore. No, because TNT has the basketball. I know they do have basketball. But TBS will have playoff baseball. I think.
Okay.
But yeah, so back then, back in the day, the big things TBS was known for was like the Andy Griffith Show, Mama's Family, Braves baseball, and wrestling. Like that was and the Goodwill games every now.
What a combo.
But so for the longest time there, the show on TBS was always called World Championship Wrestling. It was the name from Jim Barnett's thing. And it was started as Georgia Championship Wrestling. Then around like 82, 83, they changed it to World Championship Wrestling. And in 1984, Vince McMahon really wants that TBS time slot, and they have a contract. So how does he get around it? He buys Georgia Championship Wrestling. Everybody but Ole Anderson that owned that company sold out to Vince, mainly the Briscoe brothers. And because Ole and the Briscoes are partners there, and Vince basically screws Ole out of the company and takes over the time slot. Ole tried to do something called Championship Wrestling from Georgia, but it didn't last too long.
Yeah.
But so Vince takes it, and WWF debuts on TBS on July 14th, 1984, which is known now as Black Saturday, because did the local Atlanta fans hate that?
Mm-hmm. And the people were not happy with WWE. Mm-hmm. Yeah, at the time,
because again, at this point with Vince, with TNT, with Hulk, like every other wrestling fans that weren't really WWF fans looked down on it. It was cartoon wrestling. It was for kids. It wasn't real wrestling. So there were very, very divisive camps here. And I love the WWF. I mean, I grew up, but I was a kid, so of course I liked it. I like WCW too. It was wrestling. Any wrestling is good as far as I'm concerned, especially back then. But yeah, fans were not happy. Ted Turner was not happy because at the very beginning, they were just showing clips of old matches from Madison Square Garden, or that were on All-Star Wrestling or Superstars or something like that, where Ted Turner was promised a live show shot at WTBS studio in Atlanta every week. And that's not what he was getting until later. And then later they would send Gorilla Monsoon and some wrestlers down around like 85. But people still hated it. They didn't want to see the WWF guys. They wanted to see Georgia Championship Wrestling, which at this point doesn't even exist anymore. So something has to happen. Vince is losing money on the deal. It didn't pan out the way he wanted. They couldn't really get a foothold in Atlanta. And Ted Turner doesn't like it because ratings are down and people are complaining. So the person that actually makes the deal here, and he had left WWF at the time, but he still had so many connections, just a powerful guy behind the scenes, was Jim Barnett. So they wanted to try to... My boy. Jim Barnett also and it was an open secret in wrestling. Is one of the very first people from the LGBT community. He was a openly gay to an extent. Like he wasn't like out and in a sense now, but it was an open, kind of like Pat Patterson. It was an open secret.
The boys
in wrestling,
Mhm.
And so the first idea was that Bill Watts would take over the time slot and Mid-South Wrestling, but they couldn't come to a deal on that. And so finally, Jim Barnett brokers a deal where WWF sells the TBS time slot and the intellectual property of Georgia Championship Wrestling to Jim Crockett Promotions for about $1 million. That was always the rumor.
So Vince made money.
Yeah. Vince made $100,000 on the deal. and this was at a time where Vince was kind of hurting for money. This was right after WrestleMania. WrestleMania was successful, but it was expensive. And they had kind of laid it on the line for that. And this was just a shot in the arm when they were very cash poor. And it also worked for Crockett for a while because once they got on TBS, the audience liked them a lot more than they liked WWF. And the show was a hit, but they weren't growing at the same pace that Vince was. And so another effort that was made here was Pro Wrestling USA. So you had all these people like Vern Gagne and Crockett and Jerry Lawler and Jerry Jarrett in Memphis and Ole Anderson in Georgia. So they all say, hey, let's come together. Let's pool our resources. We can either fall apart or stand together. And they make this thing called Pro Wrestling USA. And they're going to run shows in WWF strongholds. And they're going to go to towns that WWF is running and run the same night. And we're going to have an NWA title match and an AWA title match and all these things. It didn't work. It didn't work. WWF was a runaway train. WWF was really a runaway train at this time. And Vern Gagne and Jim Crockett really didn't see eye to eye. There was just like power struggles. And so Crockett's just like, okay, I'm going to just try to do this myself now. So he's going to go national. That's when he starts running Philly a lot more. They would run East Rutherford, which is just right outside of New York. It's where MetLife Stadium is, where WrestleMania has been. They would run Chicago, Florida, New Orleans. And that's not even Vince territory. Like Vince is running there. Chicago was Vern's territory. New Orleans was Watts' territory. Florida was Eddie Graham's on his last legs here. And unfortunately, that's not that's a bad way to put it because he did kill himself. But the Florida territory is struggling at this time. And they're running that territory.
Gang wars. It was. And a lot of them talked about possibly killing Vince when they got together at their NWA meetings.
Like hiring a hitman
to take Vince out. Mm-hmm. That's how bad it was. Isn't the one DVD? I think there's a Territories DVD.
They were fucking.
It's very good.
They were Joe Exoticing fucking Vince McMahon.
Oh yeah.
There was talks about it. Yeah, and even like some promoters, if they didn't like an Arab promoter, they would be like, well, maybe we can take care of them. You know,
like old school mobsters.
Yeah, the NWA or the NWA, not so much Jim Crockett, but overall the bit was very mob like.
Oh yeah. And
you're the champion. Break his legs.
Yeah.
Vern didn't Vern like offer Sheik like $20,000, $25,000 to hurt Hogan in the match where he's going to drop the title to him? Yeah, break his leg. There was always a rumor that they were trying to hire Bruiser Brody to jump the rail at the first WrestleMania and beat up Mr. T.
Yeah, ain't that something?
Like it's crazy.
I don't know what I just did there.
And like when people would leave AWA, they would like almost like Bobby Heenan. They said like they threatened him like you better not leave.
Well, Heenan said something like he goes in because he was very upsetting on those things, and he said he went to the office because he wanted to tell Vern he was leaving in person because some people just didn't show up. Yeah, like I don't know if Okerlund was one of them, but some people just didn't show up.
Especially back then.
And so he's in the office with Werner Gregg, and they shut the door and like, let's throw him out the window. But he was like, and Heenan's like upset, like worried for a while. But they were like, they were kind of kidding. They weren't going to do anything to Heenan. And
it's crazy how much ego can hold back too. Like, you know what I mean? Like you could all work together and take down the guy who's running the show.
I don't think I think it was too late at that point. Like if you would have done it maybe before Mania, maybe you could have done it.
But I'm sure too, like we'll get into like how Crockett bought UF, like I bought that for promotion, but it was like they bought it to squish their talent and not put over like they still didn't work together. Like it was
not really.
They still had all their things where like our guy has to go over your guy and your guy can't. Like it wasn't like there was no structure to make it work for everybody. There was all those egos in the way.
Mm-hmm.
This is the downside of all invasion angles, unless it's like a true working agreement where. Like it's kind of preordained ahead of time. Like one of the best invasion angles ever was ROH and CZW because they knew going in, like ROH is a bigger company. At the very end, they're going to be the ones that win. But CZW is going to be benefiting from the exposure.
Yeah, when you do that angle, and they kind of talked about this in the podcast too, where it's like Vince knew the blueprint on how to do an invasion because he just don't do what Jim Crockett Promotions did. So let the other company come in and get the upper hand on your talent for a while, have them chase, and then their payoff is your company goes over.
He did exactly what they did.
Exactly. They come in and just completely squash all their talent. I honestly think what's going on now in AEW, if that New Japan thing happens or an ROH thing happens or anything like that of the sort, I feel like the ego is not there anymore. And I think they know the bigger picture and that they can benefit from one another.
Thunder Rosa's NWA contracted.
Yeah.
You know, she just beat Britt Baker.
Yeah.
You know?
And
we're probably gonna win the title.
And New Japan will not allow allow their talent to be stepped on either.
Yeah. And I mean, Omega's going over and fighting for the Impact Championship. You know what I mean? So it's just
most likely gonna win it.
Yeah. I mean, I bag on Rich Swann just because I mean he's very talented. I just when you look at that roster, you're like he doesn't
seem like the world champion.
And I don't watch it weekly. And I don't watch it weekly.
Yeah.
So it's hard for me to like visually see him as the world champion. Like I love Xavier Woods, but if I don't think I'd ever see Xavier Woods as world champion.
It's even a little lesser. It's kind of like because he's a small guy. It'd be like
Ricochet.
Yeah, if Ricochet was world champion, like, well,
and maybe that's just the wrestling brain where I just it has to be the big guy, and it doesn't have to.
Or like Jungle Boy was world champion right now. Like, well,
that's weird.
Yeah,
like I can see Ace Austin being the world champion. I just
a little bit. He's bigger than Rich Swann.
Yeah, I mean, listen. Rich Swann's every match I've ever seen him in, he's super entertaining and he's fun to watch. It's just weird to me to see him. Like, you would think if you're getting a champion versus champion match, you would have never guessed. And if you would have told me 20 years ago, we're going to get a champion versus champion, it's going to be Kenny Omega versus Rich Swann. Like, I would have never seen that coming. Like,
I don't know who in Impact you do put it on, but I don't know if it would.
Yeah.
Like
probably now they're getting. It seems like they're going hard on the Brian Myers Matt Cardone thing. Like, so I think Matt Cardone will be a champion. Which once again, nice guy. It just his wrestling style never got me.
It's kind of bland.
So the thing you're alluding to here, and this happens in '87, is that Mid-South Wrestling becomes the UWF.
Yeah, because they want to seem bigger too. Like everyone didn't want to be territorial anymore. They want to sound like they're a world promotion.
The Universal Wrestling Federation now,
And
he
Mid-South.
He bought it to. Oh, this is what I just learned in the podcast. He bought it, but kept it business as usual. So it looked like there was two rival companies, but in reality, he owned both.
The plan was to have both, and then they would come together like a Super Bowl wrestling. Also, UWF versus NWA. They come together for one super show,
and then it'd be like the UWF as the opening matches, and the main event was Crockett.
Well, it wasn't supposed to be that.
Yeah.
And what happened with that is UWF did get hurt a lot by Vince. They did lose a lot of guys. Junkyard Dog was their big star. He was gone. Ted DiBiase was a big one. He was gone. Jim Duggan. And so the real big thing that did them in, though, was that the oil industry collapsed. And that was such a huge part of the economy and the towns they would run. Like, they would run a lot in Texas. They would run a lot in Dallas. They would run a lot in New Orleans. And when the oil industry went down and went south and went really bad, a lot of these towns hurt economically so bad.
To make it local, like the coal, when the coal wasn't as big anymore and the towns became what they are now.
Going back to that real quick, how you're talking about how they swallowed up a lot of talent. I mean, that kind of happened when AEW started. Like, everyone kind of swallowed up talent. ROH took a huge hit of companies. But it's crazy that they're big names that you guys just said, like Junkyard Dog and Jim Duggan, were these huge stars in this company, and they became cartoon characters.
Yeah, and Jim Duggan was kind of, for lack of a better term, slow in WWE.
He played a slow adult, like a blue man, working collar, stupid redneck guy. You know what I mean? Like, like I can definitely see how fans back then gravitated more to the Crockett because it was more like, this is pure wrestling.
This is more
this is serious.
WWE
like
is cartoon characters. Yeah.
So like you said, they really just did bungle the whole merging UWF and the NWA and because at this point Jim Crockett Promotions basically is the NWA. Like, there's still a little bit going on in Florida and in Oregon and places like that, but World Class is separate now. World Class separate. Memphis was pretty much separate. They were calling themselves the Continental Wrestling Alliance at that point, and they were kind of doing their own thing. And so really Jim Crockett Promotions, for all intents and purposes, is the NWA at this point. And they're just they can't keep up with the expansion. and these cities they would move into, like Philly, we talk about Philly, they did well. Baltimore, they did well. Some places they ran, they didn't do so well. They didn't do so well when they would run like New York or even North Jersey. Philly was as far north as they went to be successful, and they wouldn't do well like going into like Gagne territory, and so they were spread themselves too thin, and they were just escalating money to keep people from jumping. They were paying guaranteed contracts. Vince wasn't even doing that. They would always say Vince would give you an opportunity, but you were getting paid off your house, you're getting paid off your merch sales. Crockett was giving out guaranteed contracts. And in 88, when they really hit in the financial trouble, they were still paying off the sale to Watts, or the Watts sale, which was UWF, Bill Watts ran a UWF. And they had all these contracts coming due. And I think the way they would pay them was you would get your pay at the beginning of the year. Like you wouldn't get paid weekly. You would get paid, like if you were making $100,000 a year, they would hand you a check for $100,000 your pay for the year.
That's crazy. Because then what motivation guys like, yeah, I'm just not gonna show up to this one.
And then
they claim Lex Luger was the first.
I might be wrong on that.
guaranteed
Maybe it
contract.
was like a weekly salary.
could you imagine you're giving guys who have a notorious problem for A, not paying their taxes, B, drug and alcohol problems.
The more I'm thinking on this, the more I could be wrong on that. But they did have some kind of balloon payments too.
It might have been every month or every quarter.
Yeah.
Even.
Jesus. You had like a guy like Jake the Snake back in his time. His yearly salary.
Here you go.
How is he still alive?
And then you did have some issues too with Vince. Like Vince was just hammering them, and the things they were relying on for money, they just weren't going to get it. They moved the paper.
Was Vince the same way then as he is now, where he's like, "Hey, listen, we're not paying you as much, but we're giving you the exposure. But when you start getting the exposure, we'll rail you back. Like go the brass rings there."
No, not back then. If you got over it, they would utilize you.
Yeah,
okay. They had the guys that put. It wasn't like how it is now. It didn't get that way till like 2004, 5.
The big thing difference there was now there is some guaranteed money in WWF or WWE where guys have like a downside guarantee. Like if you're signing with them, okay, your downside guarantee is this is a $200,000. I'm pulling a number out of my hat, and basically that is if you're injured and you don't work a day in the year, that's what you're going to make.
Yeah,
but then you would get paid on like back then. Every guy would get paid on house shows. Like you get paid a certain percentage of the house show or the pay-per-view, depending on where you were on the card. Anytime they sold an action figure, you would get paid a little chunk of that. If you were in a video game and they sold it, you get paid a little chunk of that. And they still do that. Yeah. They still. I don't know how they do it now with the network, especially now that the network, they're not even making money off it. It's just like they're getting paid a flat fee from Peacock for the network. So I don't know how exactly that's working now, because especially with no house shows being run, WWE's income streams are all very fixed.
Do you think we'll lose documentaries on the network now?
No, I think Peacock wants.
Yeah, I think they still want like original content like that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about like all the other shows, but when the network first came, there was a lot of cool shows, and they just gave up on them like right away.
There was it may sound corny and you may hate it, but like there was like a Punk style show.
Yeah, there was. I forget that
show.
show.
It was funny.
Swerve, yeah,
it was funny.
It had like 3 seasons. Yeah, there was
the rumor is the wrestlers didn't like it. Is the rumor on that?
I can believe that one.
I thought Fandango was funny. Like he actually, it's one of those guys who are like, oh, he actually has a personality when he's not.
But yeah, a lot of people do. And then they had that, the cartoon, the ride along one. The cartoon was great, where they tell stories and they animate it.
Yeah,
I thought that was
story
really
time.
good.
Yeah.
Well, story time, and they had the camp WWE.
Yeah. Oh, that one wasn't bad. The one was fantastic. WrestleMania Rewind, where they would talk about the match and what led up to the match, and then they'd show the match, and then people would talk about it after. That was fantastic, and they just stopped. Like, why did you stop that show?
Yeah.
And they had a lot of shows that were kind of the same version of the same show.
Yeah.
And then they just
the Table of Three was good. Where
Table of Three was fantastic.
People sit around and talk.
And that was based off of when it was WWE 24/7, and they had the Legend Roundtable.
Yeah.
And they were all pretty good.
And now all that
was just podcast before podcast.
Yeah, it was a podcast. And now like you have a guy like Stone Cold who just like is not shockingly, but like once again, you tell me the heart of Stone Cold's career, you're like, oh, he's going to become a really top notch interviewer and a podcaster.
Yeah.
You're like, well, yeah, right. But he is actually when I was waiting for Brian in the car, I listened to like 2 podcasts, and one of the other ones I started listening to was when Shawn Michaels is on Stone Cold's podcast. And
he doesn't do his weekly podcast anymore, right?
I don't think so. I think he's holding back. I think he has I think the big thing with him, I don't know if he has like a producer or anything like that, like a lot of the big name guys do. So when he does it, he's doing it via Skype.
He was like the first person to get real big wrestling podcast.
Yeah.
Like Colt Cabana was, but then like Steve Austin obviously bigger than Colt Cabana.
Yeah, you're gonna listen to Stone Cold stories.
And then he had his family friendly one, and then he had his one where he could curse. And like, well, what kid wants to listen to
PG Stone Cold
Brian Knobs tell a story and not curse? No kid.
But yeah, it was interesting. Like, I don't know, the content on there was fantastic, and it's one of those things too. It's like only if you're allowed to have your content. Like if you went out and did your own thing, like a Zack Ryder, or like no, can't go out on your own.
You can't get over. We don't want you to.
Yeah.
Anyway,
sorry.
And I know I don't know. Like I'm not sure. Like I just looked it up and it said like classic. I guess they're rerunning some of them. But he was also getting paid for that because it was Podcast One, Westwood One, which is a big radio thing, was branching out on the podcast. So he was like, getting paid to do that. So if that money went away, then I'm guessing he's not going to do it. But what happened here at the end with Crockett was very much dirty pool. And obviously we were talking about like, the NWA was like a mob, and Vince fought back. Vince fought these guys with everything. And pay-per-view was starting to take hold in the mid 80s. You had the Wrestling Classic, you had WrestleMania 2, WrestleMania 3 just took it to a whole new level. Mm-hmm. So after WrestleMania 3, Jim Crockett's like, hey, we should try this. And so Starrcade 87, Chi-Town Heat is going to be the first NWA pay-per-view. Thanksgiving night, like Starrcade always is, but this time it's in Chicago and not in the Carolinas like it always was. And so what they do here is Vince McMahon comes up with a brand new pay-per-view concept called Survivor Series. Lo and behold, it's on Thanksgiving night, the same night as Starrcade.
Yeah.
And so Crockett's like, okay, we're going to do Starrcade earlier in the day. We see what's going on here, but we'll work. We'll play this game. We'll do Starrcade earlier in the day. And he goes to cable company. He's like, hey, like charge like just say Starrcade was going to be $15 and Survivor Series was going to be $20. Why don't you charge people $30 for both and make it a package deal? They can have a whole day of it. And Vince is like, And Vince is like, if you show Starrcade, you're not getting Survivor Series and you're not getting WrestleMania 4. So don't show Starrcade.
Yeah, ain't that something?
And that
my pay-per-view, you can't show theirs.
That is exactly what most carriers did. I think it was something like
they knew they already had WrestleMania, so like, well, that's what the people were getting, whereas the Starrcades knew we don't know how this was going to do.
Yeah.
I think it was like cable system, like 3 cable systems in North Carolina, like in Charlotte, Greensboro, and somewhere else, and one in San Diego, California, were the only ones that kind of stood up to Vince, which is funny because Dave Meltzer saw it. Like he talks about like going to a friend's house to watch Starrcade 87.
That's funny.
Yeah. And so like only like 4, 5, 6 cable companies around the country showed Starrcade. And so Crockett's is going to try again. So in early 88, he's like, okay, we're going to do Bunkhouse Stampede. We're going to do a big battle royal. Like everybody it's come as you are. People are like jeans with the knee pads over the jeans.
And the cowboy boots.
And the cowboy boots.
Jeans around the cowboy boots. I want to do that for a street fight one day.
So
tape your boots here. Like,
yeah. Makes no sense. Like, what?
You know what? Your jeans are right up.
Well,
I don't know why they would.
Yeah. Tuck them in your boots.
You have to do the knee pads over the jeans.
Yeah.
And you have to have a red bandana hanging out of the back pocket of the jeans.
Yeah. Yeah. For no reason at all. Well, maybe a wife beater.
The thing is if you're wearing knee pads on your boots and the boots are taped to your legs, the only thing you have to
don't think too much about it.
Like, makes no sense.
Your pants fall down at your waist more than they come up your legs.
Yeah.
So then like your ass is hanging out.
Who's ever had a problem with their pants going up?
Wrestlers in the 80s.
You get the tape and you take the tape that and you wrap that right around your jeans that are over your cowboy boots.
Okay.
And
maybe indulge me here. It's so the muffler doesn't fall out of the leg hole. Maybe it slides down your jeans.
Make sure you wear a bed, baby, because you want the muffler to go down your leg, and if it comes out, if your pants fall down, it comes out top of your ass crack.
They said Dusty didn't win no underwear.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, but I want to do that for a street fight. I want to get a pair of them old cowboy boots. And
would you ever wear a muffler during a match?
No, I don't really have a need.
Can we make it a stipulation for Leapfrog, a muffler match?
Salute your muffler. That could be one of the things.
The goons have to wash their face with a muffler.
Oh.
Poor goons.
I'm tweeting that out there.
So for the Bunkhouse Stampede, WWF's not going to run a pay-per-view against this, but they do go to USA Network. They had TNT and Primetime Wrestling at this point. They have a very good relationship with them. And they do a special the night of Bunkhouse Stampede called the Royal Rumble. And that is how the first Royal Rumble comes around, because they want people to watch that and not order Bunkhouse Stampede. So Crockett's going to fight back. Crockett's not going to take this lying down. So WrestleMania 4 is coming up, and they're not going to get on pay-per-view, obviously. So TBS in 88, when WrestleMania 4 happens, that night, the very first Clash of the Champions is live on TBS with a pay-per-view quality card. The main event is the match that makes Sting a star for free. Yeah. Ric Flair versus Sting for the first time for free. And they do great. 5.6 rating, huge success. WrestleMania 4 still made a lot of money, but it didn't even do as well as Survivor Series, let alone WrestleMania 3. So
what was the main event for that one?
That was the tournament for the title.
Yeah, where Macho Man was with the belt.
Yeah. Did it end with Macho Man Warrior?
Reed? No,
Macho Man and DiBiase.
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, the whole big the draw was that they were going to do a 16-man tournament, 14-man tournament for the title.
Oh, wow.
And the big thing was one of the guaranteed matches was Hogan and Andre. Like, it was guaranteed you were going to get Hogan and Andre 3. And it was a double DQ.
Yeah.
Wow. And then you have Sting.
Yeah, but I mean, if you have access to 2 wrestling shows, and when you got to pay for, when you're not, most people are going to watch the one you don't have to pay for.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The first time I ever really experienced something like that, where it's like, hey, do you want the brand new thing, or do you want something that's maybe just as good but you're paying less, was in 2005. Madden, the Madden game had Madden 05 for $60 brand new. And ESPN made 2K, the ESPN 2K5, and it was $20 brand new.
Oh wow.
And that game gave Madden a run for its money.
Yeah.
And what did Madden do? What did they do the very next year?
Did they buy it?
They bought the exclusive
rights to the NFL license, so nobody can make NFL games.
Yep. They learned.
Yep.
Remember back in the day, NFL Game Day for PlayStation was a big hit.
Yeah. Yep. I think sports titles may be going back to the anyone can make them.
I think they should,
because I think people are starting, like Lucasfilms, like Lucas Games. They're like, hey, EA, you can still make your Star Wars games, but now anyone can make a Star Wars game. Or
that's why Madden is that's the same game every year. Yep. And that's what everyone says. But if there was a competition, well, we know this football game is a little better.
It's weird because it was one of those things.
Mutant Football League.
Yeah.
Where towards the end there with sports games too, it was like, oh man, like another one of these corny games where it's like super unrealistic, and like NFL, like those NFL
Rock the
Blitz,
Rink, and
they were all they were coming out every year with the other ones. I'm like, you don't need, just do a roster update. Like, but now people are like, man, I would love to play like an NFL Blitz style unrealistic.
Yeah, now people want
like the Mario Tennis or Mario Soccer.
Don't give something people for a while now, just want it more.
Yep. Yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, that's pretty much my first experience of like a company doing that.
And that whole thing with WrestleMania 4, that was kind of the last hurrah for Jim Crockett Promotions. There's a lot of turmoil going on behind the scenes too. Ric Flair is their biggest star, and Dusty Rhodes is one of their biggest stars, and their booker, and they're at each other's throats. And it's really coming to a head at the end of 88. And this is at the point where Jim Crockett is like, I'm out of money. And he and Dusty had moved to Dallas. They were in the old UWF office. They put out a lot of money. They had a private plane. They were flying back and forth, and it just became too much. So they had to sell to Turner. Turner actually wound up paying off most of the UWF sale. They always say that Bill Watts' wife would say, like, yeah, I have the check. It has Turner's name on it. And Dusty was still the booker, and he wanted to kind of push Ric Flair out. Like, there was always the rumor that at SummerSlam 88, it was supposed to be Ric Flair and Randy Savage for the WWF title, but Ric Flair decided at the last minute not to jump. But they do have the thing where for Starrcade 88, Dusty Rhodes is making the call that I want it to be Rick Steiner against Ric Flair, and Rick Steiner's going to win the NWA title in 5 minutes.
Yeah. Oof.
And that was because Rick Steiner, he was over. He was like a very over mid-card babyface, but the reason they wanted Rick Steiner is he had that rep as a tough guy. They're like, he's going to take the title from Rick whether he wants him to or not.
Yeah.
But it actually would have been Dusty that would get fired here, and Dusty that would leave. Because when Turner took over, the first thing they said was no blood. You can't do blood. And Dusty had a thing where the Road Warriors were turning heel, and they were turning heel by beating up Dusty, and he just opened up an artery. He was spraying blood all over the place, and he was fired.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's something.
Fired over blood. Yep.
So then Jim Crockett Jr., he had a 5-year deal where he couldn't do anything in wrestling after he sold to Turner. Like his brothers, we said David and Jackie stayed around. But Jim Crockett Jr., he would be out of it for a long time, and he came back. When that 5 years was over, he did come back. He tried to do something called the World Wrestling Network. And he partnered up with Paul Heyman, and he used mainly ECW guys. ECW was very hot at the time. They were building their name, and they used guys like Shane Douglas, Sabu, just a lot of your top Tommy Dreamer, Tasmaniac at the time, a lot of your top ECW guys. 911 was involved. Speaking of Can't Believe Frog.
Yeah.
And then some guys that like WWF had cast off, like Nails, Jake Roberts, Cowboy Bob Orton was in this. Sherry
I actually forgot to
Martel.
give your autograph. That's what I forgot to do today.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. Hopefully it'll be a little more frequent.
I have a poster for you too in our last unboxing. It was the Texas
Sportatorium.
Oh, that's so awesome. Oh,
Yeah,
that's so cool.
It's like a cartoon version of the building.
It's pretty cool.
I said you could hang it in the back of your room there.
Yeah. I wish I could set up something where I could do the wall that's over on this side, because I have a wrestling wall over here that basically has a 2 Chikara posters and then an Ultraman is Black poster. It's like my wrestling wall. This is my British wall behind here.
Minus the Pulp Fiction, right?
Yeah, like British here and then Pulp Fiction there. It's actually, if you go down here, movie is because there's Big Lebowski and Scott Pilgrim too.
Yeah. I have your Warhorse autograph, your 911 autograph, and that poster for you.
Oh wow! It's like going to be Christmas Day when I come back to the
studio.
Yeah. And then
we'll get the shot soon.
Of course, the big reason we're talking about and World Wrestling Network, we should mention, just to really get off the ground. They had some interesting ideas. Even though it was 94, they're talking about doing like internet broadcasting, where I guess like the speed wasn't there, especially because they're also trying to shoot in a higher definition than most wrestling was. And that was the end for Crockett in the wrestling business. He was mainly like real estate and finance in Texas. And the reason we're talking about him for the most part is, unfortunately, that he did just pass away on February 28th due to liver and kidney failure. And his brother, I think it was David, had said that 2 months before that, he had also contracted COVID-19, which put him in bad shape.
Yeah. So realistically, obviously there's a lot of ups and downs here, but without this promotion, you don't get WCW.
Yeah.
Without WCW and this promotion, you don't get the birth of what we have now with AEW.
Yeah.
Like,
how many promotions last 50 years, even beyond that?
Yeah.
Like they had a great run.
Yeah, especially in the 70s and 80s when it was white hot. You know, and not the end of the 80s, but
and the names that came out of
it.
And
they kind of absorbed the promotions around it. You know, and that tape library, and that tape library went to WCW, and that's why WCW library was so valued, because it was all the
and then WWE bought it, and now you're like, you have it all.
Yeah, you get Florida, you get Georgia. You know,
it's just good wrestling education there. Like I said, and these companies and fighting the Titan, as you would say, is inspired companies like ROH and Impact and AEW to even try. And it's just like, hey, like, we want to reuse these old storylines because they were good, but also we need to learn from our mistakes and not have so many egos, and everyone needs a shot. We need to work with people. And I feel like a lot of those rights are being wronged in today's time that could have been saved back then.
There was even a company that they didn't last long. They didn't last very long at all. They ran like Virginia and the Carolinas. They're actually, I think they're on sometimes on, and I forget the name of it, but George Scott ran it. I think they had 2 different names. George Scott ran it, and a few other people were involved. And they had like the Nasty Boys, a very young Ken Shamrock, who was Vince Torelli. Big John Studd was one of their announcers. They did try to do some revivals of it. Smoky Mountain was doing very much a similar like studio wrestling thing. But yeah, it's Jim Cornette will always attest, and maybe he would always attest, like, if they didn't try to expand it, they just stayed where they were hot, they would have lasted a lot longer.
That's what Ric Flair said. He said they'd still be alive today, which maybe, you know, if they just would have ran the Carolinas and just their area there.
Yeah.
But who knows? But I mean, you go back and watch on the network while it's still there. Who knows what happens? Peacock, and watch the old Mid Atlantic or the NWA, WCW. You gotta go in WCW.
Well, here's
like anything from like 83 to 88 is really good stuff. I mean, the promos are just on fire for a lot of those shows.
Yeah, if you want to get a lot of the watch alongs, Shivani's podcast has a lot of the watch alongs.
Yeah, well, this year they're doing 1986.
Yeah.
So now they said they don't know what's they're gonna see what happens with the network and what gets transferred over. But they're going episode 1 week. They're watching an episode and then talking about it. Yeah.
So here's just Google. This is a quick little Google search. It said 5 Jim Crockett promotion matches from the 1980s that WWE fans should watch. And the first one is Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood versus Jack and Jerry Briscoe.
Okay.
Let's see if we can guess some of these. Hang on.
There has to be the cage match, Brian, between Magnum TA and Tully.
And Tully Blanchard. Yep.
You remember? You know what show that was?
It was a Great American Bash show, I think.
Yeah.
Magnum that's
TA,
the next
Tully
one.
Blanchard?
Magnum TA, Tully Blanchard, Great American Bash 85.
Okay. And then there has to be a Dusty versus Ric Flair, and it's probably the cage match when Ric Flair was the big gold.
Do you have a show? I don't.
Would that be a Starcade?
85 wasn't the cage match.
Was it?
No, Starcade 85 was the Dusty finish.
Oh, which was the cage match where Ric Flair wins, or where Dusty wins the world title?
I think that was just on a random show. I don't think that was on like a pay-per-view.
So there is a Dusty Flair match, and that is the next one here, and it's from a Great American Bash 86.
That might be where Dusty wins.
I think that's it. I think it's where Dusty wins the title.
Dusty takes down Flair.
That's when Dusty wins the big gold for first.
And loses it 2 weeks later.
Now there has to be a tag team match between the Rock and Roll Express and the Midnight Express, but I don't know which one.
There is not.
Wow.
First War Games, Great American Bash.
Oh yeah.
War Games 1, Great American Bash 87 is the next one on the list. I guess just that War Games.
Yeah, those Great American Bash, like that was a tour. Like they later on they would do like a pay-per-view like show, but it was a tour. It was usually stadiums. They would run like the Vet in Philly. They would run a bunch of them. And one of the years they did the Vet in Philly, I think it was when they did Flair against Road Warrior Hawk. Flair comes in, and, like they did with Charlotte, Flair comes into the stadium on a helicopter.
Yeah. They would go for like 17 days, like a couple weeks. They would do the tour.
The last match is a tag team match.
Does it have the Fantastics?
It does not.
Is it the Skywalkers, Road Warriors, Midnight Express?
Oh God.
It's
Not
Road Warriors, but not against the Midnight Express.
Road Warriors versus Sting and Ric Flair.
No.
Arn and Tully?
Tully and Arn.
Wow.
Starcade 87 was the last one here.
I think the Midnight Fantastic or Midnight Rock and Rolls matches are probably a little better than that.
Yeah, I would. Yeah,
but the Road Warriors, the Road Warriors, they were a spectacle.
Yeah, so when you search Jim Crockett Promotions, you get Dusty, Nikolai Volkov, Tully Blanchard, Ricky Steamboat, Johnny
Nikita Koloff.
What did I say?
Nikolai Volkov is
Nikolai Volkov.
WWE.
Sorry. Ricky Steamboat, Johnny Weaver, Paul Jones, Terry Taylor, George South.
Paul Jones not a good promo. But you get all the good Ric Flair promos. You get the Rock and Roll Express and Jim Cornette with the Midnight Express.
The Hard Times was
Dusty with all the Hard Times promos. Magnum TA was super hot at the time until his accident.
I wonder if this is going to be a shitty thing. Sometimes when you look at Google posts, it just gives you like a nightmare.
That's one of the things that like everyone loves like nowadays is they would like have their match, go off to the side, and then have the promo area, and they'd cut the promo there with Tony Schiavone or what's his name.
So this is
David Crockett.
Yeah, David Crockett.
People would always give David Crockett crap about how bad of an announcer he was. He would be one of the best announcers in the business today.
Yeah, Bob Caudle. Bob Caudle's very good. Wrestling fans, come on in now. Midnight Express with Jim Cornette. Come on in. What do you have to say?
All right, let's wrap this up here. Great topic tonight, Brian. I love this older stuff because, like I said, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that I'm this wrestling guy. But
I believe there is an NWA DVD that WWE made, like a documentary about Jim Crockett. I think.
Like on the
I
go check the network.
It might be on the network, but then we're losing the network.
Could have been like the rise and fall of Mid Atlantic Wrestling.
Yeah, I think that's something like that. Yeah, and it is very good.
Let's wrap it up here. Thank you once again for the topic, Brian. Did a great job as always. This older stuff is always super insightful. What do you got to plug?
ProjectHumanoid.com.
You're growing that network.
Yeah, it's just easier to put everything under one umbrella. 2 podcasts now, Pedantic, Murder My Dude, a very, very much revamped shop. We had a shirt we were planning on doing for a long time. You can finally buy the 50% badass, 50% little teapot shirt. And many other things, Pedantic shirts, Murder My Dude shirts. I think we're actually just working on a Project Humanoid shirt. All the newest episodes of both shows are out. We did change our schedule a little bit, so the new Murder My Dude is actually going to be out around midnight tomorrow. So not midnight like in 45 minutes if you're watching live, but midnight after that. This is our 3rd annual show where we did Murder Oh Dude. It's like an Irish theme thing, even though it's a little after St. Patrick's Day. We actually recorded it on St. Patrick's Day. I did a little while recording the show. I think I held it together pretty much for the
drinking and podcasting is
fun. And it's about this woman, Darky Kelly, and this is very interesting. Dorcas was her real name, but they would call her Darky.
Yeah. I don't know what's better.
and so like there's all this folklore about it. It's actually something like maybe There's not really a lot of overlap between Murder My Dude and Truth Behind Illusion, but some people thought she was a witch. Some people thought she was victimized by this group called the Hellfire Club, not the comic book group,
and not the
the
X-Men.
one they're based
White
off of.
Queen.
Right. But there's a lot of interesting things with that. Some people think she still haunts Dublin to this day. So we look at her story. We look at some of the newer things. We did cover that horrible thing that happened in Atlanta. And yeah, so who died the worst? You know, the usual. So
sounds very good.
It's all at projecthumanoid.com.
I can proudly say I have listened to every single episode.
Wow.
Of Murder.
That's awesome.
Every single one.
All 102 of them, because this is going to be 103.
Yeah. Pedantic's a very good show. That one is I'm selling it for you. I'm sorry. Anyway, like it's just you start with a keyword and they kind of and end on another one, and it's just kind of like the history of words and fixing things. I know the last one you guys went into daylight savings versus daylight saving time.
Yeah, and that one's we've only done 2 of them. Number 3 is going to be coming out next weekend, so it's evolving a little bit. We're going to be do a little more thing. We have games we're doing now, more like kind of fun stuff. We're gonna do more segments. We were talking about doing a show before Talking Back. That's probably just gonna get folded into this. We're just kind of talking about like old memories and things like that. But yeah, there's always going to be like just more of a more freeform, informal conversation.
Talking. Yeah. It's great. I think they're both good shows. Definitely go grab some merchandise, help them guys out, and follow Project Humanoid. They also just started not just you can check them out on social media, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, but also they just made YouTube accounts, so you can listen. You can listen.
We're not doing video. Like we don't do video, but you can listen to it on YouTube with like a static image on there.
Yeah, it's good. I think it's a good idea. So go give them some subscribers over on YouTube. Help them out. What do you got?
We already plugged it, but independentwrestlingtv.com and go there for the thing, but go on the Facebook and watch Can't Believe Frog tomorrow night. Camper's Choice. I will be on it. I think it's 6 it starts.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Just watch it. Go on earlier. Go on at like 4 and just check the times.
Yeah. Facebook.com/independent wrestling for that. And I think their website is independentwrestling.tv. And then I have this pulled up for Andy. The week after that, the 27th, next Saturday, Andy and his tag team partner, Matt Turner, Team Blue and Gold, will be in East Stroudsburg.
Yeah, East Stroudsburg.
They will be challenging for the NTW tag team titles against friends of the show, the Diamond City War Machines. The reigning champions.
Yeah.
And
they're double champs, all right? You guys are both double champs.
But they're separate promotions.
Yeah.
So these ones we want at the same place, so it's a little different because like they can't. I guess they could defend both at once, but they're probably defending the ones that they're wrestling for next weekend.
But in photo wise, you're both champions who are holding 2 sets of belts at the same time.
The ones that were very nice, I wish I could have took them.
Yeah, are they?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, where's our belts for the table?
And this is gonna be
they're all brand new, so I didn't even ask.
Yeah.
This is gonna be very fun. It's gonna be a super show. A lot of different indie things, different indie companies under one umbrella.
And Ace Austin was at the last one, so
really?
I don't think he's at this one, but he's on the roster. So.
Want to give a huge shout out to the Diamond City War Machines. We just did our shirt exchange.
Cool.
They got their Tornado Tag podcast shirts, and I got the Diamond City War Machine shirts. So always interested in doing shirt exchanges with local talent, so I can wear your shirt and keep my my wrestling T-shirt collection showing off on social media going. What are you wearing tonight?
An Asuka and Kairi Sane shirt.
Yeah.
It's pink. I was like, oh, it's pink, and it's Asuka and Kairi Sane. It says it actually in katakana on it, so that's why I got it.
What are you wearing, Brian?
I went with one of my old favorites, the Intimate Warrior.
Oh,
I wear that one a lot.
I'm wearing my brand new pro wrestling loot shirt, the Rock and Roll Express.
Oh, very nice. Very nice.
Ricky and Hoot on there.
Yeah.
And also for the local listeners, if you're interested in that show next Saturday, it's at the Big Wheel Roller Skating venue in East Stroudsburg, 3226 North 5th Street.
There you go.
North 5th Street, East Stroudsburg, PA.
And that's next
Not
Saturday?
far from Allentown.
Next Saturday?
Yes.
I don't have the time here, but yeah, next Saturday, the 27th.
I think it's the normal time, like 7.
It's usually when wrestling shows.
I mean, it might be a little bit earlier, but I don't think so.
I have to see if I have anything going on that. I know I try to book my interviews on Saturdays, so it's hard for me to, like, I had to cancel an interview for this weekend. But yeah, check out the IWEP network. Next week is Truth Behind Illusion? ?
I think so.
I have to look at the schedule, but yeah, I think next Friday we'll be back with Truth Behind Illusion, and then we have nothing yet planned for the future when it comes to next month. So we'll keep you updated with that. I think we're just gonna kind of go week to week instead of like saying in advance. Like we're gonna try to we'll figure out the group chat. We'll let you guys know what's coming. We have some, like I said, some fun stuff going on. I think we might have a Saturday interview coming up soon for Not Cool in High School, or we might do like a Saturday episode where we interview somebody.
Okay.
I don't know if everybody will be here because it's hard to get everybody here.
Yeah.
But it'll definitely at least be me and Nikolai. Nikolai set up an interview, which is exciting. And then, like I said, Truth Behind Illusion. Follow them all, IWP Network on all social media, and then you can check us out. We are on the quest for 1K, so we're trying to hit 1,000 followers on all social media. So if you head over to Instagram and help us out, that'd be great. Twitter, and if you're watching this on Facebook or Twitch, you can go to those as well as YouTube. We're just under 500 people.
Wow.
So if we can get a few more likes or subscribes over on Twitter, that would greatly help. Our last interview with Yeti, a local rapper from Monte City.
I immediately thought about the coolers and the
cooler?
cups. I was like, you interviewed them? That's awesome.
You didn't think about the Yeti?
I didn't think about the Yeti, which I hope he's in that Tony Schiavone graphic novel.
Yeah, he's a good kid. He's been friends with my brother since they're kid. Like I've watched this kid grow up. Very nice. But he promoted the hell out of the YouTube one.
Oh, nice.
It's been a long time since we had a good view numbers on YouTube, and he definitely brought the heat with his interview, and a lot of people reaching out saying they liked it, and other people are trying to book on the show now, so it was a good hit. So yes, the support's very grateful. We appreciate it. Like I said, merchandise is available on TeePublic as well as Teespring. If you buy a T-shirt or anything, take a picture and send it to us. We'll definitely show you some love on social media and help you out. That'll do it for Tornado Tag Podcast. We're out of here. We're gonna go shoot the Patreon. So if you want to go check out the Patreon, it's $5 to check out the episodes on patreon.com/interviews at our IWEP network. And we're going to be booking our worst WWE current day roster show. And we're going to talk what's going on today in wrestling, some news here. And then we'll also be covering Fastlane. So if you want to come over and hang out, go check that out. And it should be up momentarily. We're going to record it and then just give us time and we'll get it posted
in the future.
But here's some Billy Trey, and we'll see you guys next time.
In the year 2000.